Welcome to Flesh and Pod, a flesh and blood podcast, breaking down weekly news and notes from the tournament scene, community drama, game strategy, and more. And now, here are your hosts, Darick and Logan.
Hello, and welcome to episode 165 of Flesh and Pod. My name is Logan. I am your host. And with us this week, as he is with every single set of Flesh and Blood that comes out, because for some reason he likes talking to us and I don't fucking understand it quite yet, but someday maybe, is Joshua Scott, the rules and policy manager from Legend Story Studios for Flesh and Blood. And also, yeah, Darick's here too. But Josh, man, how's it going? It feels like it's been forever since we talked.
Yeah, I mean, it has been like a year. The year's crossed over now. We're entering a new frontier, 2025. I think the start of this year has been a lot longer for some than others, but
we're right here. You don't have to talk to.
Yeah, but I hope that we're off to the right foot with the release of the Hunted set, and yeah, I'm excited to talk about that today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that we've all kind of like Charmer. I gotta know. Did you actually make it to an event?
Even if I did, I am going to tell you no. Like, that's the bit, and I commit. So no, I did not make it.
Okay. Are you lying to me though?
That's the beauty of me. You never know.
God damn it!
All right, John. If hypothetically, if you did attend an event, what would you have experienced?
Joy. just unadulterated sheer amounts of joy. The limited experience for this set is everything that I like, because I think it highlights some of the most fun aspects of the game, which is really just like the reaction step, whether it's attack or defense reactions, because that's kind of the poker part of the game, right? Do they have it? Are they bluffing? How much do they have, right? Sometimes it feels like having exactly one attack and 3 attack reactions is like when you get the aces, that sort of thing. So I mean, I'm already spoiled because I get all of the arachnes in this set, but also just the limited experience being very like reaction and instant oriented, because even with Syndra, you've got some of the like draconic instants and stuff that come into play. It's just fun. Right? There's not a lot of stuff that is what I would describe as like scripted, where you just like, hey, I'm playing this hero, so I know exactly how my turn's going to go. And I don't necessarily have like a knock against those heroes, and there's a lot of people that like that play style. It's just, even with Syndra, she feels wildly different from like Fi when you played in Uprising. So yeah, in theory, if I had played, I would have things like that to say.
Oh,
in theory.
Yeah. Hypothetically.
Right. I actually did make it to one pre-release of the 5 local ones that happened. And it was today. And I actually opened like good, like expensive cardboard for once. I opened a Goon Bait. What's the actual name of that card? I fucking forgot.
Saber Bloodshed. Is it sad that I knew exactly?
Saber Bloodshed is Goon Bait.
Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, that was a Carolina thing. She just like posts, the art shows up for the first time, like at the world premiere. All of a sudden my notifications go off, and it's Carolina posting on BlueSky with the picture just like, is this Goon Bait? Like this is just Goon Bait, right?
Yeah,
guys?
I think I saw that, and she's like, chat, is this Goon Bait?
Yep. Like this is 1,000% Goon Bait. So I've just been calling it Goon Bait ever since. And so I opened up a Goon Bait, a Rotting Remains, a foil Rotting Remains, and a Shelter from the Storm. And I'm like, oh, we did it. We paid $45 for this pre-release, and we opened $140 worth of cardboard and 3 cards, because the singles for this set are outrageous. And that's partially, I know a lot of people are going to have like some issue with that currently, but it's kind of one of those step back and breathe. If you don't need the cards for this weekend, the prices will normalize a little bit. So not Shelter from the Storm. That is not going to normalize. Sorry to inform you. You should have bought them at anything below $60. That was the correct thing to do, because that is Warmonger's Diplomacy 2.0. Probably just better in some cases. but your other stuff that's like class specific will start to normalize a little bit. But the problem is you have allocations, like some allocations were cut a little bit, which happens all the time. That's not new, but it's having a classic constructed calling that's going to happen on the day of set release. And so obtaining these cards ahead of time is difficult. And because of shorted allocations and kind of just sometimes because they can, places are going to charge whatever they think they can get for stuff. So demand is going to cause prices to rise at a higher clip because demand is low. Demand is higher, supply is lower. Like I said, that'll normalize. But from everything I'm seeing, it's going to be fucking wild. So initial thoughts from you, Josh, because I'm hoping that you actually got out to play.
Well, unfortunately, I had a pre-release lined up yesterday. I was going to attend, but unfortunately, work and some other commitments got the better of me, and I wasn't able to attend. But I heard from a couple of mates that the pre-release went really well. Everyone had a really good time. Everybody is loving the set. Of course, I have been able to play with the cards in testing, like when we printed them and whatnot. I actually got to open the first hunted box that came into the office as well for like product testing and like, you know, making sure that everything was like on par. So
quality control.
Yeah, that was super exciting. Like being able to say like, this is the first like actual hunted box, and we get to open it and place them sealed and like work out how things work. And that was super, super exciting. And like, I agree with like what you're saying as well, Chana. Like it feels like the best parts of Flesh and Blood, which is that back and forth. Do they have it? Do they not have it? Like hedging your bets and, you know, playing out play lines that are not just super linear. What am I doing this turn? But what am I doing my next turn and my turn after that? And do I need to put myself in this position or that position? Not just on the attacking side, but obviously also with the blocking side of, do I want to continue to be marked, or do I let them hit me to get that mark off me?
Right. And that's it. That gets really frustrating sometimes just because, you know, okay, I need this mark to go away. Then they play a reaction that has on hit mark attached to it. And you're like, cool.
Yeah. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah. Or it's the turns with Fang where, you know, you're sitting at one fealty and then you've got it lined up for them because you have the reaction that'll mark them and they're not marked right now. And you also have, or the instant that'll mark them. You also have the instant that gives you a fealty. And so you can just kind of bait them to getting to 3 fealty in one turn. And they're just going, oh, you are the most efficient hero ever now. Great. It's like, yeah, I don't need resources. Bullshit. We just do the thing. This is easier.
So have you guys had experience playing with all 3 heroes yet? Or
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Not playing, no.
He's read all the cards, allegedly.
Okay.
But...
Hypothetically, he's played every hero.
No,
Mm-hmm.
not even hypothetically have I played every hero.
I
haven't personally had what I think is a good playable Syndra pool yet. Like
that's the hardest one to have.
Yeah, I feel like having played against her and just knowing what's in the set, I feel like I know how she operates like well enough, but just every time I open stuff, if I just going back, I think we kind of called it right. I think Fi is the baseline.
Fi is not in the set.
Sorry, Fang. See, in my head, he's Fi because he is the baseline, right? Fang.
He's the baseline. Yeah.
Fang is I think the easiest one to try to at least play with what I would describe as like a mediocre pool, right? If you're opening stuff and you don't have anything that tells you to go in any one direction over the other, I think that his floor is the highest. So,
yeah, I agree with that. And I played Fang today because my pool screamed play Fang. And so it was a pretty easy 3-0. And it was I think that's one of the things that I've, again, noticed this every time that I've gone to a world premiere is I feel ahead. It almost like whenever I'm in an event, a limited event, I just feel ahead. because I feel like I have a better understanding of the cards out of the chute, and I'm learning things at a quicker scale because I've seen the things happen before. So looked at the pools today, understood that I didn't have enough ways to destroy dagger or to like give value out of my daggers, and then and draconic stuff to keep chains going with Syndra. And then I realized that I didn't have any Orb Weaver Spinnerets and no up6 for Arachne. And so we're just a Fang deck as long as we have 8 or so ways to, draconic ways to give the daggers go again. And I think I had 10.
Nice.
It's like, yeah, perfect. We can just shove this shit into a deck and it's fine. And I think that's, and I think because that's what the floor becomes, right? Like that's why it's the floor, is because you only need the subset of stuff you need is not that big. The subset of stuff you need for a good Syndra deck or a good Arachne deck is much greater. So, but a great pool for Arachne and a great pool for Fang, I think the Arachne's favored. So that's kind of the push and pull of it.
Yeah. But I tell you what, I really struggle with sealed, surprisingly, because especially like working on these cards ahead of the set, I know what each individual card does, but up until that point, I never think about it like strategically, like, oh, this would be good in this deck, or I need X number of these cards and whatnot. And as soon as I get to like a sealed, and this has like been the case for every single set. Like I go to the pre-release, I like open my packs, I sort the cards out, and then I'm like, okay, what do these cards do again? Like, what's my goal? What's my mission? Like, how many blues do I need? How many reds do I need? Like, what am I looking for here? This pile looks like it has a bit more reds in it. Let's go with this hero, maybe.
I feel like I'm not surprised by that at all, simply because one of the things that can cause someone to struggle in like a limited environment specifically is if you just don't understand the rules of the game. And knowing what I know about you, it's got to be hard.
You're saying the guy that writes the rules is going to struggle with the rules, Darick?
Yes.
Huh. That's interesting take. I guess
mean,
we'll let you die on that hill.
I'm not going to deny there has been more than one occasion where I've had to stop to read a card and make sure it does what I think it does before I play it.
I was just going to say, my hot take here is that I believe that Josh suffers from paralysis from analysis, right? I think that the reason that he is struggling like with the rules and everything is because when he's reading the cards, he's thinking about how does this card work in the rules and also kind of in a vacuum. And so what's struggling and what's happening is, as he said, the strategy part isn't coming together because he is just focused on the task at hand. It's hard to turn the work brain off. That is what I am trying to suggest, Logan.
Josh, I swear, if we're ever matched in somehow, some way, and we're playing against each other and you pick up a card to read it, I am screaming at the top of my lungs, we got a reader! We got a reader over here! Just because I'm going to go full bad manners, because fuck Christ.
And to be clear, Josh, because you're not an American, that is an insult. Here in America, if you read, we very clearly don't like people who read in this country.
No, we sure don't.
Oh man, what am I wasting my efforts for? If you guys don't read these cards, what am I doing?
What the fuck
we
am I
are
doing?
strictly vibes. What's this card? I don't know. Goon bait. Let's
Goon
roll.
bait. Let's go. It's easy. So because we're doing a lovely job of staying on track. I did want to talk a little bit about like with Memphis coming up. It seems like the things that are in short supply are not just your generics that are going to go into every deck or whatnot. It's everything that's good is in demand. So that leads me to believe that we're in for a kind of a bigger shift in CC. We did have, there's the ban and restricted announcement. We'll talk about that later, but it seems like we're in a spot where we are going to hit a bigger shakeup. And from the discussions I had in Prague with some of the staff, it seemed like that was expected, that we are going to see like these heroes are very good and there are some stuff that push them pretty hard. And you'll start with Charmer here. From where you're sitting and you're looking at Memphis, what do you think is going to sort of be the breakout deck for CC in Memphis? I think that you got this.
I don't think that there's going to be a breakout deck. I think that the best deck in the format is sadly still Enigma. I think that there's a lot of really powerful stuff in this new set. I think there's a lot of cool things. There are certainly a lot of things that I'm very excited to play with. It's got me brewing decks left and right. I'm even encouraged by the fact that I'm seeing a lot of other people try heroes that I don't think they would normally try. So just to kind of give you an example, obviously I'm, an assassin guy through and through at this point, but Majin, before the set came out, he had streamed him playing some new games because he was like, hey, I think I want to play that. And I want to get, reps in before the set comes out. So I know what's good and what to expect and whatever. And now, like, if you look at his most recent stuff, like he was trying to build and play Arachne Marionette, which is not something I would have ever picked for him. In fact, like him playing a hero that then turns into something else at random is like the last thing I would have expected Caleb to play. So I'm encouraged that this set is going to get people to do new things and try new things. But I haven't seen anything power level wise that says to me that Enigma doesn't still have at least a lead or is like on par enough to compete. So I think Enigma, and if I'm being honest, I also think Zen will still do very well. I think New just got a bunch of new tools, so your diehard new players are going to be fine. So I think that the Mistveil heroes, and we kind of talked about it in the past, they've been at the top of the mountain since that set came out. I think they're still going to be there. I think what we might see is then like the next rung, I think, or the next tier. And I don't necessarily even mean in terms of power. I just mean in terms of representation. I think we're going to see a fair amount of slip through the cracks. I think we're going to see a fair amount of Uzuri. She's gotten a lot of help. And I honestly think that we're going to see a healthy amount of Fang. From what I have seen, just kind of checking out what I normally look for in the community, there's a lot of people playing with and play testing against Fang. And I think even though you and I in Prague were saying, like, I don't know necessarily where Fang's going to land, once we go to Constructed, I think people are trying to make it work. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. I think that Marionette, affectionately called Mario by the crew already, is
Super Mario. See, you have regular Mario, and then you eat a shroom, and then you hallucinate and become an agent of chaos, and you become Super Mario.
I will say, usually I'm clued up pretty well on the terminology that the community uses. It took me embarrassingly long time to work out what people were talking about when they were using the term Mario. And it must have just been because I missed a night of in the card reveals discussion in the Purple Discord or something. But I woke up and everyone's just like, yeah, Mario wants to be able to use this. And I'm just like, what the hell are we talking about here?
Yeah, it sounds right. But I'm thinking that Marionette's better than people are giving it credit for. The problem is with Marionette, it's going to take months to find the optimal build. There's no such thing as finding the best way to build that hero in a week, in 2 weeks. It's just, there's too many options and ways, even small things like, do you play Isolate? What colors of Isolate do you play? How many of each color do you play? Is Upsticks and Run good enough in this deck? Is it not good enough in this deck? How many traps do you need? And it's this entire Rube Goldberg machine of, I need my card pool to be 120 cards. Is that okay? I can have 120 instead of 80. Is that cool? Because when you get down to it, you also okay, I need 300's claves because if I want to play Concealed Blade, because I need to be able to retrieve one from inventory, and it's a snowball. and gets pretty horrific pretty quickly because I've been trying to figure it out for the better part of I was in Prague doing it, so yeah, better part of a week now, and it's like I think I'm closer, but I'm still miles away. But I'll probably, if I find the stuff, I'll still play it in Memphis. But yeah, it's a fascinating puzzle, and I'm kind of just having fun with it, and I don't like it. It's not what I want. It's not what I want. I do agree with you. I think that Zen's percentage is pretty high as far as what, they didn't lose anything. And if you really want to play a Kodachi build, you could actually play a Kodachi build of Zen with upsticks, and it's probably pretty good. I would just play Zen's, face up the exact same way as it's been built, like that I've had it built. I wouldn't change my deck list like a card from what I currently have sitting right now. Oh, well, outside of the Zephyr Needles and the sideboard, those have to come out. But the rest of it I would leave. I think that Aurora loses percentage though, because we're in a meta where you do have to probably block at some point. Because if you don't, an assassin's going to rip your hand apart. And if you can't block, which is Aurora's problem most of the time, your hand is gone. You can't do shit about fuck. And so I think that deck loses percentage. I'm curious on Viserai. And I think that Victor is probably good now, like actively good. So I'm interested in how this all shakes up. And obviously I'll be in Memphis. If I can find the stuff, I'm going to play CC. I'm probably going to get my ass handed to me, but this is all just a lot of London testing is really the way I'm treating all of this. So I'm going to pay money to go to London and get my brains beat in go to Memphis to get my brains beat in for the sake of going to London to get my brains beat in. So, we're going to try though. I don't remember, and I think I said this to Rosetta too, though. It's like, I don't remember being this hyped for a set. And it feels like that's happening every set now.
That's
where
that's what we
want. Right. They perfected the crack pipe to not look like a crack pipe, but you're still hitting it and it's still a crack pipe. So I guess give me another hit. Fuck it. We ball.
I'm sure we'll be able to top this one.
I have no doubt.
It's all uphill from here.
It's all uphill from here. I have no doubts. We've talked about that 1,000 times on this show where the marketing team at LSS is incredible. I mean, just all you have to do is look behind Josh right now if you're watching on YouTube to see how incredible the marketing team is for LSS. It looks gorgeous. That's just Josh's home office.
Yeah,
so.
I finally got my shit together and started to put things like this is like barely the stuff that I have. Like it's all been in boxes and like while I've been setting up my office and painting it and remodeling and everything, I finally got some shelves and I'm like, right, let's start putting up some crap to actually look at it now. And yeah, finally got out the Themis Archangel of Judgment banner, and I've got a Typanis there in the corner that's going to be up there soon. And yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad I have the space to show this stuff off now.
Right. I can't wait till I have space again to do so because it's very, very, very small in here. But it is what it is. Eventually, someday I'll get my basement back. But there happens to be a refugee center the majority of the time. So, but the current refugee's been there for almost 6 years. So yeah, it's a long time for refugees. Moving on, let's talk rules reprise because there's a lot going on in this set, and we probably need a lot of clarifications at this point. So we're going to start with the easy ones, which are daggers and marking. It seems a little counterintuitive when you're flicking daggers, specifically Mark of the Huntsman, because flicking the dagger destroys the dagger and destroying the daggers marks somebody. How?
So it sort of comes down to just like the general idea of marked. So if like you strip away the daggers for a little bit, it's very like marked is just a very, very simple concept, which is you're either marked or you're not. And when you're marked, if you get hit, that counts as dealing damage to a marked hero or hitting a marked hero, and then you're immediately not marked anymore. It's not like a trigger. It's not a replacement effect. It just is a condition that as soon as you get hit, as soon as that event happens, you're no longer marked. What this does mean, though, is that when you introduced flicking, things become just a little bit more complicated, but it still fits in neatly into that idea of as soon as you hit, you're unmarked. And that's not a trigger. So with flicking, because when you're and just for reference sake, when I say flicking, it's the informal terminology that we use to reference effects like flick knives, which is target dagger that is not on the active chain link that you control, deals 1 damage to target hero or the defending hero or whatnot. And then destroy the dagger, and then if you deal any damage this way, it counts as a hit, essentially. So there are variations of that effect, and like Pain in the Backside, which doesn't destroy a dagger, or Blood Run Steep, I think, is the one that like is unconditional and destroys both daggers. Yeah. So there are variations of like the flick effect, but it just generally comes down to the fact that when you flick a dagger and it deals the damage, that counts as hitting the opponent. And when you hit an opponent, they are immediately not marked anymore. When you come up to something like Mark of the Huntsman, Mark of the Huntsman has an on hit that allows you to destroy Mark of the Huntsman and destroy the dagger. Destroy Mark of the Huntsman and mark the opposing hero. That is a triggered effect. So it's going to happen and resolve after you've hit them. So they're marked, you flick the dagger, they get hit and unmarked, and now you go ahead and resolve the trigger. And part of the resolution of that trigger is marking the hero again, which, you know, we're sort of talking about earlier as a damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of situation of like, well, they're going to be marked again anyway in this particular situation. So, you know, it's sort of a means to an end of getting 1 damage in maybe, but still keeping the hero marked in that particular case.
Yeah, and okay. So the double destroy conditions, you know, because you have the 2 conditions that both destroy. How can that work if you need to destroy something twice?
So it was really tricky to work, and this is one of the things that one of the cards that we worked quite hard on to make sure that it like fit into the mold of what the devs wanted to achieve. Like, you know, we're talking Mark of the Huntsman. We'll talk about them later. Kiss of Death, Take Up the Mantle. We've also got the Agents of Chaos. Like, all of these cards were quite tricky to get right because the devs and like James and Brian had a very specific idea of like what they wanted to achieve with these cards. Mark of the Huntsman specifically is that we wanted to be able to make sure that if you hit with the dagger, whether or not it was through attacking or through flicking the dagger, that you could always choose to destroy it and mark the opposing hero. Now, the problem is that our syntax up until now basically allowed you to do both only if you could do both, if it was possible to achieve both. The way that sort of optional effects work in the game is that if you say, let's say you have an optional effect that's like, you may draw a card and discard a card. You would have to be able to do both if you wanted to choose to do that effect. So you would have to be able to both draw a card and discard a card, which means you have to have at least 1 card in deck and 1 card in your hand. But if one of those was not possible, you had no cards in hand or no cards in deck, you wouldn't be able to choose. You wouldn't be able to choose that optional effect. You wouldn't be able to do that optional effect because you need to be able to do both. So what we did is we went ahead and we investigated different syntax and whatnot, and now we have Mark of the Huntsman syntax, which is you may choose to do whatever. And the idea is that instead of you may do all of the stuff here if and only if it's possible, it is you may choose to do the following. And it's like, okay, there's no requirement that you can do the following. It's just you may choose to do it. You may choose to do whatever is listed next. And in this case, it is destroy Mark of the Huntsman and mark the hit hero. And that basically opened up play lines and ways to be able to use this card in ways that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. It means that if the dagger is already destroyed from flicking it, you can mark the target hero, which is like the primary one that we wanted to make sure that worked. The other one was that if the opposing hero is already marked, maybe from another triggered effect or something like that, and you just want to get rid of the dagger to put in Graphene Chelicera into your weapon zone, then you have that option as well. So it's just this dichotomy of like, here are the things that we want to be able to achieve this card. Here's the current limitations of the current syntax. Here's how we're going to upgrade the syntax or make it very distinct about how we can word this to achieve the results we want. And then we ended up with Mark of the Huntsman the way it was written.
Okay. Seeing that makes sense. That's and I feel like that's I feel like it's still cleaner to a degree, because while it has some counterintuitiveness to it, because both conditions require destroying, it allows you to fit within theme easier, if nothing else.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, it just makes it more intuitive to be able to work that way. Like, regardless of how a player reads this card, whether or not they pick up on the more nuances of you may choose versus just you may, I think that within the context of the set, players are just going to want to be able to do this, essentially, and be like, oh, I can flick this and it hits, and so therefore I mark them. Cool, that just works. And if we did, if we didn't meet that goal, then players would, obviously not be playing it correctly. So we want to try and make this as intuitive as possible.
Yeah, and that's a question that, I even got it a few times today, and I got it quite a few times in Prague, was just, I can do this and still mark you, right? It's like, yes, you can. That is how that works. Second thing on the list is Agents of Chaos. Now, was this a nightmare for you?
We went through a lot of discussion. So the Agents of Chaos, so this is one of the things, right? Like, we discussed this like really early on about how these like were going to work and how we wanted them to work. And then the devs, of course, go off and do their thing, and they play it intuitively, like how they want it to function. But when we got near the end of the production cycle, there was a lot of back and forth on like very specific wording of like, okay, like, how to refer to them, like whether or not we're going to be using subtypes, whether or not we're going to be using their names specifically, what the reminder text is going to be, what the properties of the cards are going to be, the layouts on how they're going to be laid out on tokens, and even just like the logistics of this as well. Like, not just the fact that you don't have to include them in your card pool, but the fact that we want to require players to be able to like have these cards. We want to require players to have these cards, not just any old token or proxy or like customize, whatever. We want them to have the actual cards when they sit down and play with Arachne. So there's just so much consideration of like how we want this to work from a logistics standpoint and like the syntax standpoint. I think this probably took up the majority of my proofing time. Like this took more than anything else in the set regarding like the discussion back and forth, because there's just so many ways that you can achieve a similar, if not the same result. And it's only until like you sort of see it printed and played with do you like figure out whether or not you made the right decision, because there are just so many ways that you can express these sorts of mechanics and have the same like interactions. But what it comes down to is like, as soon as you hit that right note, and I believe we did with this, once you hit that right note and you like sit down and play with the cards, you really feel like, okay, cool. The Agents of Chaos really feel like a really good identity here. Like they really feel like, this pack of 6 that we can become and like return to the brood off of, and it feels very natural and flavorful. And a lot of that like just came back down to making decisions or making calls on where we did these syntax and changes and everything.
Now, is there going to be an official tournament rule at certain RELs about how you have to determine your agents of chaos?
So I think that we settled on we're not going to be requiring a specific method. Like, it is still just going to be a randomized method because we found that was going to be the most intuitive. Like, let's say you've got 6 agents of chaos just sleeved up, whether or not they're marbles or just the tokens and whatnot, and they're the same colored sleeves and they're opaque, then you could just shuffle those sleeves and just like get your opponent to pick one. Like, that's a perfectly valid way of picking out an agent.
What about a spinning wheel?
Yeah, spinning wheel, as long as all 6 options are equally valid, I think that's perfectly reasonable as well. I think I saw that on stream as well. Like, they pulled that out.
Yeah, it happened.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool. Of course, the trouble with spinning wheels is you have to make sure that it's an equal likeliness that you would become any agent of chaos.
Right.
In a professional setting, it's very difficult. I think it would be very difficult for even judges to determine that was the case because we're not.
It just lands on one every time. It's so weird.
Yeah. But obviously, like, I think the easiest method still is just a dice roll. Like, you know, in every single agent of chaos on the token versions, the token rarity versions, we have a Roman numeral on the English versions that correspond to a dice roll 1 to 6. On the marbles, they're just a little bit above the text box. On the have you seen the Japanese versions for the marbles?
No, I don't think I have.
So I only got made aware of this a little while ago, but our Japanese translators, they used special Japanese symbols, not just like the regular kanji for like 1, 2, 3, 4, but they use like some very special symbols for 1 to 6 on them. Check it out when you next see them. It's very cool.
Huh. I will have to look at that because that.
And how much more are those gonna cost me?
Yeah.
Fuck your wallet.
You've got until this pod airs to make your claim.
Mm-hmm. Don't worry, it's out on Tuesday. You have all of Monday to buy them.
Yep. But yeah, and just like the Agents of Chaos, like, it's very like, it should be very intuitive about how these sort of Agents of Chaos work, which is, at the end of your turn, if your opponent is marked, you become the Agent of Chaos. Everything else stays the same. You're still if you're marked before you become an Agent of Chaos, you can, stay marked. Your life total doesn't change. If you've got an intellect like effect, whether or not from an IP penalty or from like 10 foot tall and bulletproof or pursuit of knowledge or something like that, your intellect doesn't change. It is either higher or lower. If you've been dishonored, if you've been sleep darted or whatever, you obviously you can't transform.
But say you've been dishonored, you're already fucked. So.
Yeah. But like, it's a similar thing. Like, things that apply to your hero just continue to apply even after you become an Agent of Chaos, and it's the same when you return to the Brood as well. There are obviously caveats when we're talking about your like registration sheet. These are cards. These aren't tokens, which means that you need to have these cards to be able to play with them. You can't just use like a proxy or like an altar that is altered using the token altar rules. But they don't need to be included on your card pool registration sheet. You have all 6 available to you. As long as you're either Arachne Marionette, Arachne, what's the young version?
Web of Deceit.
Web of Deceit. And if you've got the Helm as well, then you've got access to them. Yeah.
Yep.
I just want to clarify something. If you get sleep darted as an Agent of Chaos, because of the timing, do you not return to Brood?
Yep.
Because the text is not there?
Yep. That's right. You won't return to the Brood. You'll have your
so like you could just be Black Widow like again the next time around or whatever.
Yeah, 2 turns. Because the idea is that if you get sleep darted, you lose all of your hero abilities, and the ability that transforms you or like reverts you back to your hero is a triggered ability on your transformed Agent of Chaos. So if you get sleep darted, then you basically miss that trigger for that turn.
Right.
And then the next turn, if you don't get sleep darted, you'll revert back and return to the brood. Technically, if you get dishonored as an agent of chaos,
you are that agent of chaos for the rest of the game.
Yeah. But I mean, that doesn't really change anything, because then your hero name changes, but nothing else, it matters really.
That's actually funny.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is, because Flesh and Blood has all these cool items and potions and whatever, is I need a sleeping potion that I can use to put myself to sleep so that I can just stay as my agent.
Just get in a car and drive. You'll fucking fall asleep.
Actually, that'd be kind of cool, because you'd be able to do that with Levia as well. Like, you could have a potion.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
God damn it. Uh-huh. Put Levia in the car with Darick and he can drive, and then they'll both go to sleep. Your carcolepsy is just fucking disastrous. And also, in reference to the Japanese marvels we were just talking about, I can hear Huckler from our Discord on his knees screaming, listening to this, because in Prague he went next level and traded for all of the Arachne marvels.
Wow!
In one day
on pre-release, on the world premiere day,
on world premiere,
yes.
Including 2 of the oversized cold full cards.
What a hustler. Jeez.
Yeah, he was on the hustle.
Absolute respect there. That is incredible.
And now there are actual differences on the Japanese marvels, and so he's going to be sitting there scratching his eyes out. It's like,
well, let's be fair. He wouldn't have been able to get the Japanese marvels at the world premiere, so
fair. But he might have thought he was done, but he ain't.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Not until you've got it in every language.
Correct. Well, they have to have some functional difference. In this case, the symbol is
some aesthetic specialty.
Right. So next on the list was just fealty and draconic requirements. I think this is really easy personally, but the card that usually comes up is Oath of Loyalty. Because Oath of Loyalty reads... 0 for 4, go again, can only be the first action. It has to be the first action of the turn, and then after you play it, you can only play draconic cards.
Yep.
So the way the fealty tokens are going to work with this, and correct me if I'm dumb, which is normal, is if you pop a fealty token, it makes the card draconic regardless of zone. So when you play it, Oath of Loyalty would see it and say, this is draconic, regardless.
Yeah.
And so you'd be good.
Yeah. And a little bit more specifically, it's not that it sets it in any zone. The way it works is, although the way it works in Fab, at least when we play cards, is that you announce that, hey, I'm going to be playing this card. And then we have all these effects that apply to that card on the pretense that you're about to play it. That this is the card that you're going to be playing. And then once we've got those effects, then you start to do things like, hey, I'm going to be playing it with this target, with these modes. I'm going to be playing it with this additional cost. And once you've determined and announced and communicated to your opponent, this is how I want to play this card, that's when we check legality. And the legality check are things like, is it legal to play this card? Is there a game rule that prevents you from playing it, like Oath of Loyalty? And so what that means is, you say, I'm announcing this card, and your fealty has added an effect to it that, basically says, hey, this card is draconic. And then you've announced the targets and whatnot. And then when you go to check the legality, it's like, hey, this card is being played as a draconic card. Therefore, it meets the requirement from Oath of Loyalty, and you can go from there. So that's essentially how it works. And it was specifically it was made that way a while ago. I think we did it with, I can't remember the card that was used as the example before, but essentially one of the core premises of Hunted was built around this idea that you could use fealty to overcome Code of Allegiance and Oath of Loyalty and these restrictions or these requirements to being able to play these cards as draconic cards.
So what happens if a card fails a legality check? Right. So for the players listening, if they're saying to myself, okay, if I do this, but either I forgot to pop my fealty, or let's go a step further and say I don't have a fealty, I just announce I'm playing a card that's not draconic, right? Then
it's
how does that resolve?
It's pretty straightforward. Basically, if you can't play the card for whatever reason, you rewind to just before you play the card. And that comes down to, obviously in person play, we shortcut a lot of these steps, or we do these things out of order and whatnot. Like the very technical, specific way that it's written in the comprehensive rules allows for these things to happen in terms of like fealty and oath of loyalty. But in the short, if you can't play a card due to an effect, if you can't pay for the card, if you don't have enough to pitch for it, if you can't pay the additional cost or whatnot, then you don't get penalized unless you're trying to do it illegally. Like you try to get away with it, obviously. But if you like put this card down and you can't pay for it, you can just take that back because there's nothing that forces you to play that card or keeps you locked in. Obviously, we want to stop people from like angle shooting or rule sharking or those sorts of things. But,
right.
When it comes to doing things like playing a card, as long as you're not trying to like fish information out of your opponent, like you're not really gaining anything other than showing your opponent that, hey, I have this card in my hand and I either play it or I don't.
Okay. That reminds me, I got to add something in here that I have to talk to you about from me because it's something that happened in Prague.
Is it because he said fish information and you are now immediately thinking of the jam band Fish?
I fucking hate the jam band Fish.
I know you do.
You can't find a person that hates fucking Fish more than I hate Fish.
Really?
Like, Jesus Christ, are they annoying? Like it's like if Rush was bad at stuff, it would just be Fish. So I can just listen to Rush.
I don't think. Hear me out. I don't think that Fish is legitimately that bad, but it is exacerbated by Fish fans.
Fine, and that's okay.
Fish is to bands what like Zack Snyder is to movies, in my opinion.
Jesus Christ. Okay, that's a lot. We need to break that down at some point, not right now. But the bigger thing for me is always this, like, these are like Fish fans are like people that would have been Grateful Dead fans if they were old enough to be. And Grateful Dead fans alone are pretty fucking unbearable. So yeah, I kind of am with you here. But yeah, the Zack Snyder thing is probably very accurate. Honestly, it's really hard for me to argue with that. It's not that like I have anything against the band Fish or really anything against the fans. It's just like it becomes the person's entire identity. And the only thing that they have any expertise in is the band Fish.
Yeah, it's the crypto of the music world.
There we go. We did it. It is the crypto of the music world. That is correct. Now we did it. We're
Fish Bros.
We're gonna get like 7 dislikes because we have a bunch of fucking people that are 100% Fish fans that listen to this show on a regular basis.
Do you think we have faced off with like the 2 people?
Do you think you'd be able to pick a Fish fan out of your Patreon patrons?
That's Matt Two Tokes.
Easy.
That was the easiest like ever. Not to call Matt out. I love Matt, but come on, man. Like the name is right there. So there's probably, I'm trying to think of anybody else that's like of our age. Oh, Rich Gapinski, maybe.
I think Rich has more taste than that.
I think Rich went through a phase where he wore hemp jewelry with beads on it. And that's exactly where this fits in. So at some point in time, he had a little wooden mushroom on a piece of hemp and thought it was edgy. And that happened, right? So
love it.
That's my guess. We're going to get attacked so bad for this. But speaking of attacking, next thing to talk about, I think that's kind of important is, and I got this question quite a few times today, as well as in Prague. If you were to attack with a dagger and it destroys and you're able to re-equip it, can you attack with it again?
Yes.
Because it's a different object, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So like when you go ahead and destroy an object, moves from the arena to our zone outside of the arena, it essentially resets. So like loses all the effects, loses all history, all of that. And then when you bring it in back from the graveyard to re-equip it, either using Syndra or Retrieve or whatever other effects you have, you're essentially equipping a new dagger. And so that counter on like the once per turn action for its attack and whatnot gets reset. It means you can just attack with it again, which leads up to some really cool play lines with Syndra.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen them. Really fucking incredible. Turns out that the whatever of the dragon, basically they printed Uprising as an instant at rare. So turns those daggers that you just can sack on a Blood Runs Deep turn so you can attack with them again, and now they're just 2s. That's great.
Amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. That one was pretty simple. The next 2 are not that simple. My notes are pretty comprehensive on both these cards in the show notes, so I'm hoping that you're ready to deep dive on these, because my show notes for the first one is Take Up the Mantle, the whole fucking card, Josh. What the fuck?
Oh my god! Like when I saw this card, and now this is funny, right? When I saw this card, I had basically the same reaction as most of the people when they saw this card for the first time. I don't think that the syntax on this card changed at all when it came across my desk. I'm pretty sure the devs nailed it like head on with what they wanted to do. But we spent a lot of time. I think this was maybe like a third most amount of time that we spent on this card for the set. So like Agents of Chaos was definitely number 1. Maybe Kiss of Death or the Arachne Head or Mark of the Huntsman was probably number 2. And then Take Up the Mantle was sort of like in that, like just after that. We didn't change a single thing about this card, but we just had to be absolutely sure that like all of these interactions were the way we wanted it to. And like I went through so many scenarios with Brian and the devs and everything being like, right, if you do this and then you do this, this is what happens. Is that okay? All right, next one. If you do this and you do this, this is what happens. Is this okay? And it got to the point where they were pretty sick of me asking questions, but like,
so I'm going to go through the one because it's the one I keep doing and people keep going, Talashar's bugged. And that is, I play Isolate, and then I play Justinic, both modes.
Yep.
Because I can. And then I play Take Up the Mantle. And then I turn the thing into a Kiss of Death. And they're like, so you don't get the Justinic bonus anymore. I'm like, no, I do. They're just like, what? I'm like, yeah, it gets the +5 still.
Yep.
It was a legal target. It resolved.
Yep.
We're still there.
Yep.
Nobody ever argues with me. And then the other one, well, the other one's a lot simpler. And they know I usually don't get an argument. Is usually when you're switching this into like a Bonds of Agony, and then you can then Justinic it, and that counts as reaction 2. And then you can then flick something off, flick a dagger that you're not attacking with as reaction 3 to turn on the Bonds of Agony.
Yep, that's right.
And there's a lot of that. I just mentioned 2 things, Josh, and I didn't even mention like the rest of them.
Yeah. I mean, like we honestly, we could just spend an hour like going through iterations of Take Up the Mantle and like different things you can do with it, different cards, different tricks and tips and whatnot, which I think would be a great pod, but I don't think there'd be many listeners would be like just sitting here, just hearing card names being recited one after the other. But like you are correct. Like the primary parts of this is how I explained it to a couple of people who were confused about how it works. Take Up the Mantle doesn't replace the card. Just imagine that Take Up the Mantle, all Take Up the Mantle does is gives you a Sharpie to change what's written on the card, essentially. So it's still the same card there that you've played Take Up the Mantle on. And all these effects that apply to that card, the layer continuous effects is the technical term for it, still continue to apply to the card. But all you've gone ahead and done is take a Sharpie, scribble out the name, the text box, the power property, etc., and just write new values in there. And then when you're trying to work out what the card is, like you're saying, what is the power of this card? You start with, obviously, what is written on the card, which is what Take Up the Mantle has changed. And then you apply these effects again, which is your things like your Take Up the Nick and the +3 from Take Up the Mantle, and also Take Up the Nick, just a Nick.
Take Up the Nick. Take Up the Nick is good.
Yeah,
I'm taking up the Nicks all fucking day now. Yeah.
And it's the same with like Bonds of Agony as well, right? Like it's still the same chain link. It's still the same card. All you've done is gone ahead and written Bonds of Agony, and you've written the ability of Bonds of Agony on the card.
I'm not writing that all down.
Yeah, it would take a while. That's why we've got Take Up the Mantle to just pretend that we've written it down.
There we go.
Yeah. And then once it has that static ability, then it starts to do things. Of course, there are obviously caveats and there are extensions of that, and there are things you've got to remember. Like, if you go ahead and replace everything that's written on the card, it no longer has what was originally written on there. So if you have like your Isolate, for example, which has Dominate, if you go ahead and Take Up the Mantle, it no longer has Dominate, so the opponent can keep defending with defense reactions from hand. If you go ahead and replace a Bonds of Agony with Take Up the Mantle with something else, then you won't have the Bonds of Agony text on it. So there are lots of you just got to remember you're just replacing what's written on the card with something else, and then you go ahead and apply these external layer continuous effects or static continuous effects onto the card, and that's what you have. What really confuses everybody is just how many iterations of that you can make. And, there are just so many combinations. There's so many cards with stealth. There are so many targets for that. There are so many attack reactions, so many play lines. And then when you combine that all with Kiss of Death, that starts to obviously make things complicated. But it all stems from this very basic of idea of Take Up the Mantle essentially replaces what is written on the card.
Yeah, there was the other interesting little line that I took that I was really proud of myself was my opponent. I read them for having a defense reaction in Arsenal, so I isolated, and then shifted that into Take Up the Mantle, shifted into a backstab to turn off their defense reacts after I had already, and then went from there. And they're just like, oh, yay, we did it! You die now. Have a good day.
It's certainly going to be one of those very infamous cards. I think it's probably going to be at the level of what Steelblade Shunt was, or Reckless Swing was back in the day.
Shut up.
It's just it's really just going to be one of those things where it's like, if I'm at a low life, I just have to hedge my bets and play my outs, because I cannot, if I'm too low, I've risked them coming out with Take Up the Mantle, which can just blow someone out of the water. And there are going to be so many bad beat stories about someone.
Oh, yeah. There's going to be a lot of Just a Mantle stories.
Just a Mantle, yeah. Just a Mantle.
It's Just a Mantle.
Just a Mantle.
This is the first time Charmer hasn't looked inquisitive. He's just looked amused.
I tell you, have you played with or against Take Up the Mantle yet, Charmer?
Just on Talishar.
Yeah. You look so demure right now.
Very mindful.
I don't know. Very mindful.
Look, he said that we didn't want to take up the entire podcast, so I'm just trying to keep my mouth shut.
No, take up the entire podcast. There's no such thing as an entire podcast when Josh is on. We're here until we're done.
I understand that.
And then another hour after.
I just really love all of the neat things that we get now. Just in general, as assassins,
a lot of cool
right?
shit. Yeah.
Because the design team didn't just give us more of the same with the class, they gave us a bunch of stuff that stretches design space. I think that's the part of the reason that I'm so excited for this set, because cards like Take Up the Mantle are neat, and something like that has just not been done before. But then when you combine it with cards like Kiss of Death that are neat, and something like that has not been done for. It's been talked about, speculated, but it's just not been done before. And the fact that then you add in the on-hit and then the flicking interactions, because it's not just any weapon, it's of course a dagger specifically. And now you're rolling. And then when you combine the two and you are, taking up a mantle into a Kiss of Death, and then you go to the next chain link, and then you flick the card that was never a Kiss of Death to begin with, blah, 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 right? So even cards like Pain in the Backside, where, again, not necessarily, revolutionary, but we haven't seen those flick style effects without breaking the dagger before, right? And so now that becomes a very threatening, it's just a 0 for 3, go again. On paper, you're it's a head jab. Why are you excited about a head jab? Because of the implication, right?
It's because of the implication.
It's because of the implication. So I don't know. I look at all of the neat things in this set. Even again, Goon Bait. Again, for the people who don't know, Savor Bloodshed.
Goon Bait.
On paper, it's it's just a 0 for 4 Go Again, but it's so much more than that because it's a snatch with Go Again, and like, yeah, it has to be a dagger, but it's not. It's just over and over and over cool cards in this set, and
Goonbait is so good.
Yeah.
But last thing on the rules reprise, Kiss of Death. The notes again, very detailed on this one. This whole fucking card too.
I think this is the card that I was most excited to have previewed in the season. So I usually stick around in like the purple Discord, the card reveals chat and whatnot, and just like make sure everybody is on the right track regarding rules and whatnot. But I love just being part of the community because that's just how I engaged with the community before I started with LSS. And I just, honestly, I couldn't help myself. I was like, there's this one card that I am really excited to get previewed. And it turned out it was going to be Max Ferocity's cards.
It was Rachel's.
And the rules reprise was scheduled before this card came out, which I was like, oh man, like I really want to write something about this card because like it has some very cool niche interactions. It's like a really cool use of a non-functional subtype that we've like never seen on an attack action card before. I've got to put it in this rules reprise. But because of course Max Ferocity's preview was like later, like, hey, what we could do is we could just tease it a little, and see what comes out of it. She thanked me for getting her phone blown up for everybody asking her where spoiler was. Because everybody was like, Josh has been talking about the spoiler. Where's your spoiler? Spoiler it now. But she did a fantastic job. Her cosplay for her preview was absolutely outstanding. It was a fantastic preview, and I'm very, very happy with how it turned out. And the reception to Kiss of Death was very cool as well. I think a lot of people still are like trying to get their heads around how to best utilize this.
I will tell you, just at like the world premiere weekend in Prague, the number of times, because I had it in my sealed pool for the calling, the number of times that I would play it, and then I would play like, what is it, to the point, right? Where it's like +3, +4 if they're marked, but it's 2 daggers. And my opponents would go, dude, that's for daggers. You can't play that. And then I would just rotate the card. I wouldn't even point. I would just rotate it and wait. And they're like, wait, what? I was like, yep.
Go on.
Yep.
Yep. And honestly, it was another one of those cards that came across our proofing desk, and we looked at the card and we were like, man, we gotta work out if this needs to change. Like, do we need to add any additional rules? Do we need to like add a clause on this? Do we need to turn the subtype into an ability? Like, what do we do here? I'm pretty sure there might be like 1 or 2 minor clarifications in the rules for this card. Otherwise, it literally just slots right in. There were like none of the text changed at all. The card just got printed as the devs wrote it. And we're like, wow, that's interesting how far you can push like this design space and like the interactions and everything by just like adding an innocuous, non-functional subtype from an equipment or a weapon onto an attack action card, and just everything just ends up working. It was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I was when that was spoiled, I immediately went to TCG Player and pulled up the price graph for Flick Knives and watched in real time the graph just do this. And I'm just like, because when I pulled it up, the graph was at 30, and it had been 20 like 2 minutes earlier than that. And I watched it go from, it was like 30, I hit F5, 55. I waited 10 seconds, hit F5, 65. Waited 10 seconds, hit F5, 80. Waited 10 seconds, hit F5. And I was like, this is fucking hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now people are wishing they had bought it at 80.
I mean, yeah, it's one of those things like you're never gonna be able to get it at a cheap price unless you have it already.
Just open it easy.
You open it. You can still buy Outsiders. Like, you can still find people stocking Outsiders.
Not a lot anymore though.
Oh really? Is it really?
It's getting harder.
Okay.
It's 115 is the cheapest one right now. on TCG Player. If you wanted a cold foil, you're looking at 170.
Good Lord.
I have a cold foil. I'm good.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, again, I'm an assassin fan or whatever, but I think I got my cold foil for like $70.
Yeah. Yep, that's a thing.
Good man.
I opened mine out of a box.
Yeah,
but
I'm pretty sure I opened my cold foil out of a box as well. It's good times, outsiders.
It's good. It's much better. Moving on to Back Alley Oracle, because this is Josh's baby, if there ever was a baby for Josh.
Wait, before we go, I didn't put it in the show notes. How
dare you?
Not everybody is in our Discord, and so there are some listeners who might not know about the other card that Josh graced us with, which was Visit the Laundromat.
Christ.
I just wanted to very on record publicly say thank you for feeding into my shenanigans, my dumb jokes, because it makes A, me very happy and appreciated, and B, Logan very upset and annoyed. So
a couple of things. Why is it assassin only?
Well, it fits. It fits, right?
It needs ninja. Ninja can use blood splattered too.
So, all right. So first of all, I couldn't help myself because I've been doing this job for so long now. When I see a custom card, I cannot help myself but think, how do I proof this card? How's this card going to interact? What rules changes would I need to make? Because it's instinctual when I see a card that's like in development or whatever that I need to like fix it. So when I heard Charmer be like, it'd be cool if we had this card that could like clean up stains and like, you could pay or do that sort of a thing. It was like, bam, I got to do this. And then I'm like, it'd be funny if it was called Visit the Laundromat, kind of like Visit the Gold Main Estate or whatever.
Yeah.
And you paid to like clean up your laundry essentially. And I'm like, what could you pay with? Like, would it be copper, silver, gold? Well, obviously it's silver because assassins get contracts. So you go ahead, you kill someone, you complete your contract and get silver, and then you spend that silver on your laundry. And I was like, this idea must come to fruition. I must create
a fun idea. I stand by it.
So Visit the Laundromat is a very simple blue block 3 0 cost assassin action with Go Again. As an additional cost to play this, destroy X silver tokens you control. Remove all stain counters from up to X equipment you control. So it's literally doing your fucking laundry.
Yeah.
It's not a real card, people, so don't worry about that. Josh did use official frames. So I know people that will print this for me. But I don't have a way to credit the artist, so I don't feel like I can.
Yeah, I will say I should have probably credited the artist. I think I just pulled this from Google Images because it was a real rough job because I just wanted to make the joke. But you could probably replace it with an image from a local artist or an artist you support or something like that.
We'll just have Ezure do it.
Oh yeah. Commission a laundromat from Ezure. I'm sure that would go well.
Well, that'll be perfect.
And we'll play it in UPF.
Oh my god. Like, wait, what? This card isn't real? Look at the art. It says Wardy Therianto. Of course it's real.
Yeah, he's over there signing playmats for this card right now.
Yeah, just go ask him. See if that works out. And then it's like, no, this can't be real. Well, there's Josh Wiscott's right over there. He's a rules and policy manager. He's the one that shared this card with us. Yeah, he'll obviously tell you it's real.
I proofed this card.
Yeah, he proofed it. It's got to be real. Oh my god. Back to Back Alley Oracle here, which is again Josh Scott's baby. It's your favorite thing.
Absolutely.
Don't lie to me. Like, it's fine. But so a couple of quick hitters on here. I think that most of this is pretty straightforward. We're going to definitely linger on one more than the others, but the first one was now that there's a change that you're able to name cards that are not format legal as long as they're official Flesh and Blood cards. So that includes special use promos.
Yep, that's right. So you can name Go Bananas if you really want to.
Shit, yeah, I can. Still my favorite Flesh and Blood card.
Xmas present.
You can say a shitty Xmas present or
absolutely
cracked bobble.
Yeah, Yep, absolutely. Crackable. But of course, obviously naming cards doesn't give you the functionality yet, but
go on. I can go. If you let me go bananas in CC, I will go bananas in CC.
I heard a story of somebody using Go Bananas in a UPF game at their locals, and they literally bought boxes of product.
Yep.
So that they could pull I think it was a Command and Conquer or something.
It was a Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
Yep. They started busting boxes of Arc to find a Command and Conquer. And it took like 2.5 boxes to get there.
Outstanding. Standing.
That's why I own Go Bananas, which is why there's cases of product up there just in case. Like I just
ready
literally
for the
just
day
in
that
case.
it becomes legal again.
Darick.
Come on, that was good.
Apologize, Darick.
No, just in case.
Motherfucker. I fucking hate you so much.
Listen, I don't mean to derail the podcast, but that's exactly what I'm going to do because Logan needs to hear this story, okay? I was on a work call this week, okay?
Was it while you were streaming? Because we know you do that a lot.
No, I was on a work call. And the call ends 5 minutes early, and Swami, the project manager, says, "Is there anything anyone else wants to talk about?" And so here in Michigan, obviously the Lions lost last week. Big deal. And I was like, I want to talk about the Lions, mostly because I noticed that my friend Ty was on the call. I've known Ty for since I was in high school. We were in old fantasy football leagues where you literally recorded everything with pen and paper because there were no sites to do it. That's how long we've been doing it. But he also happens to be a sports writer, and he has covered the Detroit Lions for a long, long time. Okay. So I mention it in the call, knowing that it's going to fire him up and we'll have some fun for the last 5 minutes. And we kind of shoot the shit. And we were talking about how the downfall of the Lions was literally just that they had no defense, right? They were just pulling people off the street. And he said he was at a watch party and a corner got hurt and then a safety got hurt and number 40 enters the game. And obviously, because he covers the Lions, everyone turns to Ty and they're like, "Ty, who's number 40? And he's like, "I don't know." It's the first time in his life he's like, "I don't know who it is." So he looks it up. The guy's name was Morris Norris. So that leads to me making a joke about that's a Madden auto-generated name.
Yeah,
okay.
Made up name.
Somebody else makes the joke about no, he's the best pro football player because he's like Chuck Norris's son or something. And so I proceed to say that the problem is that he lacks speed, because if there's something that we know about Chuck Norris, it's that he's not really a runner, he's more of a walker.
Drown in piss.
And
damn it.
I got coworkers to audibly sigh on the call, and it might have been my greatest moment of my professional life.
So if you didn't know, Joshua, the actor Chuck Norris portrayed Walker, Texas Ranger on television. Okay.
Yeah.
He's a man of culture.
There's on the very fringe of my American knowledge. So, yeah.
And it should stay there. Let it be known that it should stay there.
That's amazing. And I agree. Morris Norris sounds like do you know what it sounds like? Have you seen that Key and Peele skit where they're going through
the East West Shrine Bowl?
Yeah. It's honestly, that sounds like one of their names.
Yeah. Chuckle Buck McFuckasign or whatever. And yeah.
The one that's literally just a jackhammer noise.
Yeah. The best one is whatever. It's John Smith from BYU.
Yeah. John Smith,
BYU, which is perfect.
Yeah.
And it's they did a rap video, like Key and Peele did, of all the players, doing their names and all their shit. And the verse that goes hardest is John Smith's. He goes super hard. And I'm just dude, this is fucking great.
I have not seen that. It's all right.
I will find it and link it. Right. It is fucking beautiful. It is one of my favorite things. But at any rate, let's skip over to tiebreakers really quick. I think that this is a pretty easy one too, where in the knockout round specifically, if there's a non-advanced game state or non-advanceable game state, then it will go to check life totals. Higher life totals awarded the match. if the life totals are equal, you would then start a new game of 4 turns. And then at the end of 4 turns, it would be highest life total wins. Again, in case of ties, it becomes sudden death. Is that pretty much right?
Yeah. So the idea is that, and it's something that we wanted to implement for a while and just sort of clean up. But of course, because it affects like how players interpret and understand how elimination games work, we needed to put it in the back alley oracle to make sure that players were aware what the procedures were when they get to that state. And as the game becomes more and more complex, there are going to be situations where you will end up in a deadlock or a stalemate and whatnot. Like we had hypotheticals of even during Uprising where like if you're Dromai, you have no way to be able to pitch cards and you draw like all invocations that you can't pay for or something like that. Then you literally have this game state where you can't do anything. And, there's other variations of this, but the most important thing is that when you get up to an elimination game, you have to be able to have a result to be able to progress. And the previous one was literally you just start a new game and you just play that out. But because players have agency, we allow players to have agency over whether or not they want to play a game, you cannot end up in the situation, this hypothetical situation where 2 players can sit down and they can just say, yeah, I'm in a stalemate. And you could, indefinitely have this game keep going on and on and on and again. Well, stalemate or deadlocked, doesn't really matter which one. So the idea is that for the purposes of both the players, the tournament, and people at home watching and whatnot, there is a deterministic way now to be able to achieve a certain result, and that is a player winning. And that just comes down to if you get to the point where you're about to stalemate or deadlock or come to a draw, you warn the players first, like, hey, we're about to go into this tiebreaker situation. And that gives them an incentive to try and break that deadlock if they can, or that stalemate if they can. And if they can't, they go into the situation where, all right, now we're entering this tiebreaker game. And you move into this tiebreaker game, 4 turns, which gives you enough time to be able to like progress the game state a little, or like, develop your board, or, play out a couple of turns, and then deciding the person by the highest life total. And then, of course, like if you reach this ultimate conclusion of like, the players are just aren't playing, or we're in a constant stalemate, or like neither player wants to make the first move because it's like a reaction heavy thing, then you end up with this ultimate tiebreaker, which is the player with the highest standings wins that particular match. And that just gives players an additional incentive that if they reach the top 8 and they're locked for top 8 and they've still got 1 or 2 games to go, it gives them an additional incentive to be like, hey, you can actually get more of an advantage, like, very, very small incremental advantage by being placed even higher on in the match than just by, deciding to not play the rest of your games.
Okay, that makes sense. I don't have anything to add to that.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, I think.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
We saw that first as like an experimental thing for the calling in Chicago. But I mean, it hasn't come to bear yet at all. So
yeah. We wanted to sort of like, we were thinking that it might come up in Chicago, but one of the things that we wanted to do was sort of like also share it with a lot of our judges and head judges to make sure that they understood and could give their feedback on the process and lodge their concerns that if we did have any scenarios or cases or things that we think that players would be unhappy with, that we could address them before we made it an official policy. So it's one of the reasons why we wanted to test it out in Chicago.
Yeah, makes sense. Now to the one with a lot more meat to it. I called it combat simplification. I don't know if that's the best terminology.
I think it's fair. I think that's probably the right way to phrase it.
Yeah,
streamlining, because it doesn't necessarily simplify it, because a lot of the stuff just is still there. It just looks like it's reducing steps. So
I know that you really want to shift the paradigm so that you can get your KPIs up so you can achieve MVP over there, Charmer. But we're going to call it simplification. So fuck off.
Yeah.
But so can you just kind of go through this? Because already have had questions on this from people, and I don't know why people ask me rules questions because clearly I can't read. But if you could just, talk through this really quick and what the implications are.
Yeah. All right. So like the key aspect of this, and like the only actual change that is happening, like the only interaction that is happening, is that the point at which we consider the chain link resolving moves back one step. And it basically takes when the chain link resolves, and effects that depend on when the chain link resolves, and moves it back to when you check go again. That is literally the only interaction centered part of it that has changed, is that particular aspect. Everything else is superfluous, contextual. It's all very much just cleaning stuff up. What we've done is we've said, okay, we've got 3 steps here: damage, resolution, link step. Previously, in the damage step, all you did was calculate and deal damage and maybe hit the opponent. In the resolution step, the link resolves, and then you have a round of priority. And during that round of priority, that's when you would resolve your on hits, your deal damage, your and your link resolves, your chain link resolves triggers as well. Then in your 3rd step, at the beginning of that, you check whether or not you have go again, and then you've got another round of priority, and that round of priority is when you would go ahead and play additional cards, you play another attack, or you would both pass on an empty chain link, an empty stack to be able to close the combat chain.
You'd play it in. That's where you play an instant to bounce gone and a flash to your hand.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. But now we said, okay, well, if we're moving this link resolve thing back, we don't actually need this additional 3rd step. So let's simplify, clarify everything. We now have 2 steps. So we've shrunk down from 3 to 2. In the damage step, it's the same thing. You calculate damage, you deal damage, and then you have priority before you leave the damage step. And in the damage step, you've dealt damage, you've done the hitting or whatever. Now you resolve these on hits, these deal damage, whatever. Once that's all done, you move to the resolution step. Your chain link resolves, you check for go again, and then you go into priority. And that priority would be resolving any chain, so when the chain link resolves triggered effects, and once that's all cleared up, you can start to play attacks again. So it essentially streamlines the combat by removing a superfluous step, because we don't need a step that just has priority in it. And I think the 2 other aspects that I think make it more intuitive. One is resolving on damage and on hit triggered effects during the damage step. And 2, aligning chain link resolution with checking of go again, which is something that I know a lot of players and a lot of judges have had trouble understanding or comprehending, because they were 2 sort of very related terms that were separate because they were in 2 different stages. Now they're in the same stage and happen at the same time, and people are happy. As far as I'm aware, people are happy. The feedback that I've been getting is that people are happy, which makes me happy. The key part of this, though, is that there is one critical interaction that changes and a few other minor interactions. The critical interaction is with electromagnetic somersault. Previously, electromagnetic somersault, you had to play before damage was dealt, because as soon as damage was dealt, you would then move into the resolution step, the chain link would resolve, and that's when that effect would trigger. If you tried to play electromagnetic somersault after damage, it wouldn't trigger at all. It would just you would basically miss the opportunity, miss the window. And that caused a lot of confusion with players and whatnot, and is certainly one of the influences behind this change. But we've been looking at how to simplify combat for a long time, and this is just one more reason on the pile of how can we, keep players' intuition in line with the rules of the game. So Electromagnetic Somersault has gotten a boost because now what you can do is you can play it after damage is dealt, which means that you can basically duke out your opponent that you've got this card and you can play that attack again. Or something like Snatch, where you can draw Electromagnetic Somersault off the on hit, play it, and then return Snatch back to your hand. So there's a little bit more flexibility in how you can play this card. There's a little bit more interactions there. And also it's more intuitive with how players want to be able to play this game. There are a couple of minor changes as well. So like there's new Alluring Desire, Second Tenet of Chi Moon, where those have on Chainlink Resolves triggers, which means that they happen after you've dealt with on hit or on damage triggered effects. Kind of relevant for some assassin cards that do on-hit banishing and whatnot, where you have to make sure that you're doing that order correctly. But aside from that, like you've got other on-chain link resolution triggers, which is things like your Virulent Touch, Double Strike, your Wager stuff. But honestly, the interactions there don't really change at all. So everything else regarding combat and the end of combat and everything is all the same. Like, you know, your Herald timings, your Zen timings, all of that completely unchanged. Terminology may have changed a little bit, but all of the actual interactions and how they play out and the windows that you can play them and the opportunities that you have are exactly the same. So if there's anyone who has any questions regarding that, I recommend that you read the article very carefully because it outlines the things that have changed regarding the interactions. And if you're still unsure, ask your local judge. You don't have to bother these two to answer all of your rules queries.
Please don't. You'll get the wrong answer. Also, that was so well democratic of you as you used the terms streamlining and simplify equally in that entire screen. I am so proud of you for making so mom and dad we're not mad at each other. That's good.
No, we're still mad at each other. It's just that Josh isn't the reason we're getting divorced anymore.
Yeah, just not in front of
me anymore. I love that. Not the reason we're getting divorced anymore. It doesn't. I wrote these in here, and I think you explained these already, but I wrote about design space and streamlining versus oversimplifying. Are you ever concerned when you're doing these kinds of changes? It's like, do you ever like kind of have to take a minute and go, are we doing this for the right reasons? Are we doing this to make the game easier to understand without removing some of the base complexities that make this, make Flesh and Blood the game that everybody really enjoys? Because the complexities of Flesh and Blood are part of the charm. It's that the game is not something that you can just pick up and be a master of. It takes fucking time.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a balance, right? Like, I don't think that I'm ever going to get to the point where I could simplify away a lot of the complexities of Flesh and Blood. Like, the complexity is built into Flesh and Blood. Like, it's not just a streamlined it's not something that you can reduce to a completely linear streamlined process just through rules. The aim that I'm trying to achieve is try and make it as intuitive as possible so that people don't get caught up in the minutia of terminology or specific phrases or timings that confuse them. Like, I don't think that we're ever going to reach the stage where those will ever go away, but my prerogative is to try and reduce that as much as possible so that when you go ahead and you sit down with another competitive player, like, you are speaking the same language, you are like playing the game how it feels good to be played. And on the other side as well, just like being able to reduce the complexity of like, terminology and exceptions and whatnot, so that when you get into the game as a new player, you don't have to know these or remember these or like have these written down. You can play intuitively to like pick up this game. Like, one of the things I say is, I said this before, I don't play Magic. I don't think I haven't played Magic yet. but I've read the rule book a few times. I think I'm up to like maybe 8 or 9 times is how many times I've read through the comprehensive rules. And
hold on. I played that game for 25 years and never read the rule book. What the fuck, Josh?
It's a good read. I tell you what, it's a good read. My favorite section. Sure. My favorite section is probably is probably layering. I think that they have they have a really interesting section in layering, which it takes me a little while to get through. But
I read that one because I was a judge.
I will say one of the things that really stuck out to me was like there are a lot of card by card exceptions explicitly in those rules, and it's not to the fault of Magic. It's just the reality and an example of like what happens when you start with a really complex system and you've created something that works in a way that you intuit or like you interpret these rules to work. And then all of a sudden you want to introduce a card, or maybe there's an old card that stops you from changing the rules to make it more intuitive. And then all of a sudden you're faced with this problem of how do we actually address this issue? Do we errata the card? Do we remove it from the card pool? Do we pretend we didn't even print it in the first place? Do we add it as like an explicit exception in the rules? And there are just so many different ways that you can go about doing this. And like it's just part of like what we're trying to do here, which is like, we have the system that we created in the first place. But what it's doing is it's limiting our design space, or it's reducing the intuition of how we want these cards to be played or how we want players to interpret these cards. What can we do about it? And here, what we've done is we've tried to change the rules, or we are changing the rules to make it more intuitive at the cost of changing some particular interactions. And that's one tool that we have in our toolbox to be able to, work this. And in my view, I very much push back against making exceptions for specific cards. In my mind, I want, the rules to be a framework for cards to exist, and I don't want the framework to carve out specific exceptions for individual cards. If an individual card needs to fit into the framework, it's the card that needs to change most of the time. But in this case, it's a framework that is going to allow for many other cards to work more intuitively in future, especially around the design space.
That makes sense. We're going to do a quick hit on the ban and restriction announcement. Not a lot on this one. So if you're not part of the competitive community, there was a nice, brief, shiny window of time, and I mean fucking brief window of time, where all you could ever see anybody testing were different builds of Zephyr Needle Ira with 9 copies of Up the Sticks and Run. Now, and Flick Knives. Reason being is you got to get your first needle blown up. Sure, don't care. Swing with your second needle. Now it's a 3 because Ira. And the breakpoint is totally fine. Like they block 3, you don't lose your needle. They react to 4, you do lose your needle. Whatever. Then you'd play Up the Sticks and Run, return your broken needle, or you'll break the chain, play the Up Sticks and the Run, bring back your other needle, and then attack with it for 6, which now is not going to get broken by fucking anything. And this was just the play pattern of the deck. It was numbers, pure, unadulterated numbers. And I guess in confirmation that LSS pays attention to what is happening in the greater ecosystem, and pays attention to Discords, and pays attention to all of the different forms of communication that are public, and some probably that are not as public. They caught on to the fact that everybody had already figured out that this is the fucking best deck in the format, because it was. And everybody was pretty much starting to load up their carts to buy the cards needed from Hunted to play this deck in Memphis. And there were, and much to Brian is very much so a candid, funny individual. So of course he puts screenshots of your fucking Slack chats in the banned restricted announcement to show, yeah, we fucking knew about this, goddammit, and we decided to give you fuckers time to figure it out, and you figured it out in like 12 hours. So we had to just go ahead and axe it so that Memphis wasn't awful.
Yep.
And also, neither James or Brian uses Slack in dark mode. I think that that's the most offensive part of this whole thing.
So I got a lot of flack for that as well in the judge Discord. They're like, "Who is using light mode in your company? What a disgrace!"
It is a disgrace. And somebody is fucking up, and they need to get their shit together and use dark mode.
Or hear me out. What if, because all of these folks either currently or are in the process of, moving to New Zealand, maybe life is so good out there that you can live in light mode and just not hate yourself. Like maybe
this does
we're
not
all
compute.
in dark mode because.
All right. Okay, I don't usually do this. In defense of light mode, it is nice to not be flashbanged when you go from dark mode in something like Discord and Slack into an only light mode thing like Google Docs or your email or something. So
yeah.
if it's all consistent, if it's all like white and you're in a brightly lit room in an office or something like that, light mode is not that bad. The pain of it comes when you have to switch, or when you're in like a dark dungeon or something like that, and you're, are working in a, bright lights in front of you for like hours on end.
Yeah. And so my entire thing, like I had actually did a little bit of interacting on Twitter, which I don't do much of, and then also got some DMs because of that interaction about the take of, if this was a known issue, why didn't they do anything about it, before, and why did they let it be found? And I think that's easy. Because there's some hope that has to exist that the hive mind hasn't become that fast. Right. And it has. There are testing teams. There are Talishar games. There's data. And where there's data, you're going to be able to start parsing together things quickly. And that's what's happening. So the real question from people was just what was usually concerns about the approach. Why would they even let it go in the first place? Why wouldn't they just on last Friday before the world premiere say, yeah, we know this, and so we're just going to go ahead and ban Zephyr Needle now. It's for your own good, kind of like they did with Berserk and Crown of Seeds. I'm okay letting this float, mainly because there are ways to beat that deck. It is not impervious. It's not even close to like being Starvo or anything. It's very good. It's probably the best pure numbers deck maybe that we've seen in a very long time. But at the same time, it was more of a if X then Y. And I think that approach is fine. I think that, and as long as you are able to identify the situation as it occurs, you're okay. So if 5 people would have figured it out, or 10 people would have figured it out and walked into Memphis with the Ira deck and run roughshod, and then one of them, get 3 into the top 8, one wins the tournament, nobody would be up in arms, right? But it's when 200 people show up to Memphis with the Ira deck, and that's all you play against for 9 rounds or whatever, 8 rounds or whatever, it's miserable. So I think that letting it air a little bit was fine. And as long as they knew that their data was going to be good enough to identify it was a problem. Darick, where were you on this? You didn't say anything publicly that I even know of.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't say anything because I guess I just am of the belief it's a non-issue. Like,
right.
For me, it's one of those, like, yeah, they might have known about it and then they decided to let it go, and people could say, like, why would you do that? But how many times have we also heard the devs say something along the lines of, like, in testing, we actually saw this other deck that nobody's playing, and it was like really, really good, right? They see stuff all the time, and then we just don't find it. So I think that just having this stance of like almost like permission, like we'll let this go and see if it mimics our testing, and then we'll take action and we'll have the appropriate response ready, right? This is also very clear to me that they knew that it was there, but also that they also knew what the solution was going to be. And I think that's totally fine, because then you can just slap it, you can slap it out into the world and have it be taken care of. I just know that there are lots of times where players surprise you, and it could be that they don't find something. It could be that they find something you didn't expect, or it could be that they find counters or solutions that you didn't expect, right? Maybe, they thought it was going to be absolutely insane in testing. And then somebody comes out and they're like, actually, I've cracked a really good matchup against it, blah, blah, blah. Right. So you don't know. And as much as you can test and have like the best players, the best devs, whatever, internally, it just doesn't mimic what your player base does out in the wild. Right. Like once you get thousands and thousands of people playing thousands and thousands of games, that's just a data set that's far beyond anything that you're going to be able to do internally. So I'm fine with them letting it go. Like to me, that's what should happen 100% of the time, like all of the time. Okay.
Everybody's on the same page. I'm not going to get Josh in trouble by asking if he has anything to add. I'm nicer than that. So next thing here is Joshua, our most esteemed friend and love of my life, honestly, has asked for story time. Yeah. And I am more than happy to just sit back and let Josh cook. So Josh, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I I kind of wanted to save this for this podcast, actually, because I was hoping that Charmer would be there, or I was hoping that both of you would be there in person, because the story takes place Worlds Japan 2024.
Yeah.
So I entered the cosplay competition in Japan in 2024, and I cosplayed as Arachne Huntsman. I sent you guys a link of the photos so you can have a look there. But basically, the story starts when I was in Barcelona. I think it was Barcelona. It was Amsterdam. That's right. So I was in Amsterdam. I had a sort of a slow day and was asked to be a judge on the cosplay competition. And obviously being the rules and policy manager and being a judge is my jam. So I was like, yep, sure, I'd be more than happy to. So we spent most of the day obviously going around, like talking to the cosplayers and getting out all the images. And I was rushing to sort of learn as much as I could about cosplay as possible so that I could be as good a judge as possible. So I was like, I was looking at the descriptions that people had written and researching what is EVA foam? What are these stitching materials? How do the people paint these things? And how long does this take? And it was an absolute blast. I absolutely loved being a judge there. And it was so cool to see so many people be so enthused about cosplaying and everything. And it sort of just dawned on me. I was like, actually, I've always entertained the idea of doing a cosplay. It's crossed my mind of wouldn't that be cool to do? But I've never really sort of had any wherewithal to just go ahead with it, because I thought, maybe I wouldn't be able to do it as good as I think I would, or there's no character that really super inspires me to cosplay. But after doing the judging in Amsterdam, I was like, maybe I'll give it a go. I'd love to be part of the competition as well, if possible, because then I can sort of see where my level is at and be part of this this community working towards a similar goal. So I asked internally, Nico, one of our Premier Organized Play managers. I was like, hey, there's no rules against me being part of the cosplay competition, right? Like, surely I wouldn't be getting any advantage as long as I'm not cosplaying like an art that nobody's seen before. And he's like, nah, go for it. Go do this cosplay. Like, you'd be great to have you. I'm like, okay, cool. So I spent a little while trying to work out what I wanted to cosplay and do and that sort of a thing. And then I was like, you know what? I would love to do Arachne. And the more I sort of thought about it and the more I sort of like was, you know, working out how to do this cosplay and everything, it started to dawn on me how I wanted to do it. And I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to... The categories for Japan, by the way, is like it was done entirely different for cosplay. So you had like 3 major categories. It was like construction, authenticity or accuracy, and then performance. And then there was like a 4th prize for like the best newbie, essentially. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can... I don't really want to work towards the construction thing. Like, I kind of want to do the more character-y kind of thing. So I'm going to, like, work towards performance, essentially. So I had this idea that I wanted to do, like, this cool little, like, you know, offbeat performance thing, which I'll spoil soon. And then I also wanted to embody Arachne as well. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to do construction or anything. While I'm in costume, I'm not going to talk to anyone at all because canonically, Arachne Huntsman is mute. He only communicates in like, I'm pretty sure there's a story in the lore where like he communicates to Azuri by writing with like one of his victims' blood on like paper.
With blood.
Yeah, or something like that. So it's like, he obviously communicates well, just not vocally. So I was like, okay, cool. What I'll do is I'll dress up and do this thing, and I won't tell anybody that I'm cosplaying as Arachne. I'm just going to disappear. I'm going to appear as Arachne, and I'm just going to embody him entirely. Just this assassin, like, roaming through the halls. And that's what I did. Saturday, I finished all my duties. I told some key people if they need me, they know where to find me, just in case, like, things go wrong. The cosplay room in Japan was like across the hall. You can't walk there in your cosplay. You have to like go through all these corridors and whatnot because you can't be out in the cosplay outside the convention center. So I go there and I meet this other Arachne. I can't remember what his name is for the life of me. It's probably in the thread that I've linked you, but he's Japanese, didn't speak like any English. So the only thing that we could say to each other was like Arachne, and he was dressed as Arachne solitary confinement. And when I saw that, I was like, hey, Arachne. And then I show him my mask and he's like, Arachne. So we were best buds. We couldn't communicate outside of just like giving each other the thumbs up and whatnot. My costume, obviously, with cosplays and whatnot, got a little bit disastrous. There were some mishaps where like my horn broke off and something got ripped, and I needed to make like eye holes in my my like head cowl thing. So there was a lot of like last minute things that I needed to do, but eventually got onto the floor and everything with everybody, and I just started like waiting until my time to go up. I was like scowling around, skulking around and whatnot. Finally get called up to do the interview with the panel. And the people there know who I am because I've got a stage name, which is Moonlight Solace. Yep. And then I've got my actual name written there. So everybody knows who I am. And I walk up there and I've got my one of my props, which is a Codex of Frailty, which is a 3x3 binder that I've stuck a whole bunch of clay and stuff on. And it is entirely filled with frailty tokens. I think the number was about 300 and something frailty tokens were inside the Codex of Frailty. So I go up and show off my costume and everything, and I'm carrying this book around. And Max Veracity is one of the judges, and she like points out, she like sits here and she's like, wait a second, that's a binder, right? That's not filled with frailties, right? And I open up the book and she's like, oh my God.
300 frailties.
So it doesn't quite stop there. So you know, we go off. I've done the interview and whatnot, and we're waiting for the presentations, the performances and whatnot. I talked to Sam, who's going to be doing the MCing, and I'm like, hey, like I want to do this. I want to do this performance where like you just do like a little bit of a narration, soliloquy, whatever, and I just sort of skulk around on stage and then do the thing essentially. And he's like, yeah, sure, man, I'll be happy to do this. So I give him the script and whatnot. We get to the performance. A couple of the people go on before me. They're coming on from the side to do their performance, and then they go off on the side. And it's my turn. And so Sam starts narrating. And instead of coming on from the side, I come up from the crowd through the aisles to walk up.
Shield style. Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of like oh my God, he's behind us. And then I sort of like skulk around on stage and like do a few poses and whatnot. And the narration sort of comes up to this, like talking about like frailty and like making your opponents weak. So it's like the perfect time to strike. And then it comes to the climax of the narration, and I take up the Codex of Frailty and open it up. And in the middle of the Codex of Frailty, I've printed 2 big pages which say, look under your seat. People start looking under their seats. And what they find is that under every seat in the crowd, I've put a frailty token. So I've essentially opened up the Codex of Frailty and given everybody in the crowd a frailty token as per the rules of the Codex of Frailty, which I was like, this idea I just have to do. Like I thought of this thing and I really wanted to try and do it. So like I prepped, I think it was like 600 frailty tokens possible.
So many.
Put a whole bunch of them in the book, put a bunch of them underneath like all of the seats in the audience and everything. And I'm like, this is going to be great. And then, I got a really cool reception and I ended up winning the accuracy port of the competition, which I was super, super stoked with. There were so many really cool cosplays there as well. So I was felt very welcoming to be part of that community as well. But honestly, like it was just an amazing experience. I couldn't have asked for anything better for my first cosplay. But yeah, that was my story time cosplaying in as Arachne in Worlds in Japan.
And you won a tailor.
Yes, I won a tailor.
You own a tailor. You didn't even have to like. You earned it. I'm a
proud owner of a tailor. Although there are two more stories for this as well. There's two more like follow-ups. One of them was I don't think James knew I was Arachne, and James was sitting in the audience and he was having the time of his life. They called up the 4 winners to the stage, the very front of the stage. And by the way, James, I was Arachne the whole time, if you didn't know, just in case you didn't listen to this podcast.
He doesn't, but it's fine.
But he we got all 4 winners to the front, and he starts like going across and like, yeah, amazing cosplay, like you did so well and whatnot. And he gets to me and he's like, yeah, great cosplay. Will we ever see who's beneath the mask? And of course I'm not speaking, so I just shake my head. I'm just like I didn't have the heart to be like, it's me, James. I was Josh the whole time.
Scooby-Doo moment.
Yeah.
Just pull off the fucking mask.
The second follow-up was Carolina didn't know it was me until after the event as well. So she and Max, I think, were talking like the changing room and whatnot, and she was like, who was that Arachne? Rachel was like telling her, oh, it was Josh. She didn't believe it at all. She's like, no, I heard him speaking Japanese. He's clearly a Japanese guy. So they come around. I'm like finished getting undressed and whatnot. I've got all my Arachne gear, and the door swings open. And Max is just like, see? And Caroline is like, no fucking way.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense, actually. That all tracks. Jesus Christ.
It was good, though. Like, it was so cool. I think the most fun thing about it was, like, I took the liberty of just, like, completely disregarding that I was, like, a person cosplaying as a character. It was just, like, so fun to
just be
like,
the character.
I am that character for the afternoon. Mm-hmm. I get to skulk around the hall staring at, like, random strangers and doing this to them, like, as Arachne, mm-hmm. and then, like, this. Mm-hmm. It's like, It's so fun to just like dissociate and just be like, I am Arachne. I'm this like cool, mysterious assassin. Let me give you disease from my Codex of Frailty. Blah.
Yeah, I'm gonna blood rot you next. Which some people would pay extra for that. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, true. You just gotta find the right people.
We don't yuck yums around here. We just let them get the blood rot. Which apparently is tuberculosis outbreaks in America now. So, there's that going around.
Oh, God.
Were you here? Were you giving out blood rot in America, Josh?
No comment.
Okay, well, are we going to get more cosplay in the future out of you?
I think so. I am planning a cosplay. I am thinking about taking it to London, but honestly, for me, I don't think that I'm going to cosplay every event. For me, the enjoyment of the cosplay is knowing that I've done a really good job and like focusing on what I want to cosplay and just enjoying myself rather than just like being like, I have to do a cosplay every time now or every single event. Like I have a few ideas of who or what I want to cosplay as in future if I'm going to attempt this again. And I'm sketching up what I want to do for the next one, but I think it's just going to, take time and we'll see. And, I think the most important thing about cosplay is that you just enjoy it, really. Like, you really shouldn't push yourself to, force yourself to, I have to do a cosplay or I have to do this to, to impress people and whatnot. I personally just want to do it for my own enjoyment, my own pleasure of just being the character for an afternoon or being in this costume and looking dope. Like, that's what I get out of cosplay, and that's what I'm going to continue to aim for moving forward.
This sounds a lot like podcasting, except for what you were doing was dope, and you also were enjoying it. Otherwise, it matches.
What?
I want to know.
You enjoy this, surely.
Well, when you're here, yeah.
He used to when it was Jordan and Abby.
I love you
I
too.
want to know, when you are not cosplaying, is there going to be an opportunity for us to judge together? Because when you started to say Barcelona, I was like, no, it can't be that one, because I was a judge in Barcelona.
I'm sure there'll be an opportunity to judge alongside me at some point. I'm actually going to be judging the Calling Christchurch. I'm going to be judging for 2 days there. So
I figured you were, because it's down the street from your home.
Yeah, I think I can actually kayak there if I really want to.
Okay, rolling up to a fucking Calling in a kayak is a G move. You know that, right?
Hear me out, though. If you're going to do that, now you have to cosplay, but you have to do it as like one of the new pirate characters that are on the art.
Yeah.
Not me
Shelter the
mentioning
Storm?
anything on the websites, just mentioning the art.
Yeah. Right.
What's the other one? Nip at the heels, right?
Nip at the heels. Yep. Nip at the heels.
And there was one printed in like another set that had like a piratey themed artwork.
Yeah, it's
Already
been
Dead
teased
had
like
pirates
throughout
on
3
it?
or 4 sets, because obviously Steven, our good friend Armada, gets really excited every time.
Oh man, does he ever?
Was it glyph overlay that was like, that's a pirate ship?
Right. Yeah. At any rate.
Yeah.
I did have another quick thing from Prague. So Charmer was there seeing this in real time, so he will attest to this story. My opponent plays, I forgot the name of the card now, but it's the one that is you reveal
your
cut
hand
from the same cloth.
Yeah, I was going to say, you reveal your hand.
Reveal your hand.
Reactions.
If your opponent reveals their hand, if there's an attack reaction, it marks them, and then it gives +4, 3, or 2, right, to your dagger attack. Costs 1. My opponent, I'm like, okay, I reveal my hand, and he's like, okay, so this is just public information. I'm like, it is until I pick my hand up, when the card resolves. He's like, no, I can, you have to show me your hand anytime I want to see it now. I'm like, no. Once the card is resolved, these come back to my hand, and no. And then he's like, no, it's in the rules. And so I call a judge, because I'm like, I'd like clarification, if nothing else. Judge comes by, and he's like, no, you don't get to just see their hand whenever. And he's like, I would like to appeal that. Here comes another judge, head judge for the event. no, that's not how that works. And he's like, well, I read it in the rules. And so they bring over and they pull up the rules and show him. And he's like, oh yeah. And right. I can ask him to show my hand anytime. And they're like, sure, you can ask him. They're not obligated to show you though. And he's like, well, I don't think that's right. So Josh,
before you go, Josh, just I'll give you what my stance was, because obviously, like Logan said, I witnessed it and then we talked about it afterwards. And I think that this is a case of two things. So first, I don't think that you're obligated to show the hand, because to me, that falls under, and it's not explicit in the comprehensive rules, but to me, that falls under note taking. You're just asking your opponent to take your notes for you, right? Just because you're not physically writing it down, you're basically saying, hey, like, let me remember those things. But the reason specifically that I think that this player was doing this, he kept saying it's public information now. And as somebody who's covered a lot of card games, but specifically, in the last 5 or 6 years, but before the Flesh and Blood stuff, I covered digital card games. And so what I was telling Logan is a lot of times in digital card games, they do the like note taking for you, right? So if you play MTG Arena, the Elder Scrolls Legends of Runeterra, it doesn't matter what it is. If something reveals a card in your opponent's hand, unless there is a new effect where they like shuffle their hand in their deck or whatever, like that card just stays revealed for the rest of the game. Now that is an interface thing that they're doing on the digital client to make it easier and increase the player experience. And I get it, because it is technically public information, but that's also because in those games, there's no way to stop somebody from note taking, right? There are no rules explicitly against a note taking. So there's no difference between if I'm at a PC and I write it down versus if they put it on the screen. So why not make it a user experience thing? And so because the player kept saying this, I think that they, one, likely come from digital card games, but also to me, this falls under the note taking clause. So now tell us how we're wrong.
Now, just in case this person listens to the show, I want to make sure that going forward that they understand that how this works out in general. Please tell us.
Yep. So when you reveal something, during the time that it's revealed, it is public information, or it's visible information, because it's face up. Anybody can reference it at any time while it is being revealed. Revealing something is a discrete effect, which means that it happens and then it finishes. It doesn't mean that it's always face up, it's always public, or that the zone is always public, or it changes anything about the visibility of that zone. It is something that happens temporarily, and then once that is finished, then it goes back to what it was. And it's the same with reveal and look and search and all those effects that allow you to temporarily look at private information. Once you've got that information then becomes historical, which is something that has been public information before, but then basically goes back to being private or hidden or whatever. And while you might remember it, it doesn't affect the game state. And because it doesn't affect the game state, no player is responsible for recalling that information, and it cannot be taken note of. So the idea here is that you go ahead and you look at their hand, you can see what's in their hand and whatnot. As soon as they take their hand back, if you forget what's in their hand, there is no obligation for the player to show or tell you or otherwise reveal what was in their hand, because that is now historical information. This is a key part of Flesh and Blood in terms of the skill aspect of it, because what it does is it puts the onus on the player to be able to identify and remember important parts of the information and be able to push that part of their skill going forward. And it's the same reason it's the same thing with like pitch stacking, for example, like why we don't allow players to write down the cards in the order that they pitch cards in, because that is another aspect of skill testing that we have in the game where, you could try and spend all your time to remember it, but you might as well focus on the basic things and then start to work up to building up that skill of pitch stacking, and then remembering your opponent pitch stacking, and then remembering cards in your opponent's hand, and all those sorts of other aspects. Mm-hmm. So in short, no, revealing the hand through something like cut from the same cloth does not allow you to continue to look at the opponent's hand. The only way that would happen is if it was worded similar to something like -IO, which allows you to look at the top card of your deck at any time. And it has the explicit clause at any time. Otherwise, look effects, search effects, reveal effects are all temporary, discrete effects that make it, public or reveal that information to somebody, and then that information returns to its usual state. And whatever information you've gleaned from that becomes historical, which means that you're not responsible to recall that information anymore.
Okay.
I'm so glad you mentioned the pitch deck thing, because when I was observing this, that was what I thought, right? Like in my head, I was like, you would never say, like, let me see the bottom 3 cards from the previous turn. Like, yes, that was public information. We both saw it. We both know that they're there. We should know the order that they're there. But, like, you would never do that, right? So, to me, it's that same thing. Like, yeah, it was public, but now it's not.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can take it to its logical extreme, which is like, oh, if we allow people to be able to look at cards that they've seen before, then we may as well put our pitch cards face up into the deck as we put them up instead of face down. And like, we don't have to go to that logical extreme. I think it's pretty simple to explain to people, like, this is just a skill testing aspect of the game. I can understand, like, as you said, Charmer, like, I can understand people trying to take this to gain that advantage because maybe they understand that's how it works from other aspects of other games. They might have played a card game, maybe a niche card game or something, where a reveal does mean that they play with their hand up the whole time. Like, you can't fault players for trying to take skills or experiences that they've had from other card games into Flesh and Blood to help interpret. But yeah, in Flesh and Blood, this is essentially how we operate, is that we want memory to be a skill testing aspect of the game, and these reveal effects are just temporary.
Okay. Last one before we go to listener questions. Arachne Trapdoor. If you begin searching, can you fail to find?
Hold on. Let me just quickly read Trapdoor. What does Trapdoor do again?
You may search your deck for a card, banish it face down, then shuffle. If it's a trap, you may play it until the start of your next turn. So if you begin the search, can you fail to find?
No, you cannot.
Unless there are no cards, right?
So if there are no cards in deck, then of course you can fail to find. I mean, you can. I mean, if there's no cards in deck, you can't search your deck. So you can't even produce the optional effect to cause you to search your deck. But you're right. If there is a card in your deck and you begin searching, then you cannot fail to find. The idea here is that if there is a search effect or something that requires you to do something that can be verified by your opponent, then you have to be able to do it. If it can't be verified, then it is optional. And that covers things like hidden triggers for things like Cloaked, for example, hidden triggers in your hand, or activated abilities in your hand, searching your deck for cards that they can't verify the effects of. But if they see that there's a card in your deck, you can't fail to find a card because friggin' obviously there's a card in your deck.
This was an argument that we had at one point, and I was like, no, there's a fucking card.
Yeah.
You can't fail to find a card when there's cards.
If I can see a card, like, I don't know what the properties of those cards are, but if there's...
But they're cards.
There is a card there. Yeah. Right. So, yeah, you can't fail to find if you begin searching for Arachne Trapdoor. You can, however, because it is an optional effect, say, I do not want to do this effect because it is May. Right. It's optional. You can say, I'll just not search and shuffle my deck or anything like that.
Yeah, and prior to searching, you do have the ability to access all public information, so your graveyard and your banish zone.
Yep.
So that you can look at those prior to searching.
Yeah, absolutely. And determine whether or not you want to search your deck.
Right. Okay, so let's get to listener questions now, because we are 2 hours and 8 minutes into the show.
Let's go.
We have through O on the listener questions. So let's see how long we can get to this to get the show to go. Trevor wants the record so bad, and having you two fist fight over it's going to be fucking joyful.
I listened to the Trevor one, and I was a little bit disappointed he didn't just waffle on for food for like another hour, because
he could have.
I reckon he could have. If he just talked about food like for another hour, he would have smashed my record.
I think Trevor and I in Prague, when we had dinner, like we're at dinner for probably at least 2 hours.
Your next podcast, you should just do it at dinner. You'd fucking, it would be a 4
we'd blow past so many things. Yeah. And then as I'm just getting drunker and drunker and drunker at dinner. Yeah.
It slowly becomes an after dark.
It's just not slowly. It gets there quickly. But the first one's from Dom. The question is pretty simple. Will there be a national needle exchange due to the banned and restricted announcement? I have the worst friends. I really do.
That's funny. I like that.
I would like to just say the answer is no, because I was told you're not supposed to share needles.
Yeah. That you trade in needles for clean ones. That's the needle exchange. Apparently that missed Michigan. Now we'll go to at least real questions for a minute. From Fallen, what's the hardest rules question you've ever gotten?
Hardest rules question. That's a really tough one to answer, because usually it's not the hardest things that I have to deal with in rules aren't like just a question. Usually it's just like, here's a card, and the card is the hardest thing I have to deal with. There is actually one recently that came up, and I think we're going to talk about it as well. I would be surprised if we're not. Is the things like Prismatic Leyline and Azuri. And I think that's probably one of the harder rules questions that we had to not like answer. It was similar to our discussion before regarding rules, which is we don't have a strong way, one way or the other, how we want it to function right now. But the decisions that we make today means that it will influence things later down the line. And that means that if we want to change things later down the line, it may reverse this ruling if we make the wrong decision on how we want to rule this. So Prismatic Leyline and Azuri, the idea is that Prismatic Leyline gives your next blue attack +3, your next yellow attack +2, and your next red attack +1. If you attack with a blue attack and then you replace that attack with using Azuri's ability with another attack, does that new attack get the a +1? So like you have a blue, it gets +3 from Prismatic Leyline. You Azuri it and you exchange it with a red. Does it get +1 from Prismatic Leyline? And the answer,
I'd assume no.
Huh?
I'd assume no.
The answer is yes.
Well, fuck me.
The answer is yes, and the reason for it is that we are interpreting the question, or we're interpreting the syntax of your next being an all-encompassing phrasing for the next attack you play, activate, trigger, otherwise gain control of. And in the context of Azuri, what you're doing is you're wholesale replacing one attack with another. And because this is another new attack that goes from something you don't control to something you control, it becomes your next attack. It's the same chain link, but it's technically your next attack because it is something that happens after another attack or after Prismatic Leyline. That is an attack that you gain control of. So Azuri fans out there, rejoice. You can Prismatic Leyline and get a slight minor benefit out of it. If I see that in a top 8 Worlds or Pro Tour, I will I don't know, I'll do something. I'll do something to celebrate.
Sounds great. Next one is from Loose Leaf T, so Tyler Loose. Was he an advocate for the name Null Time Zone as a known time zone hater? And is the name the reason it's missing from the DB as of the time of writing?
First, shout out to Tyler Luce. I don't know how many people out there know that Tyler Luce forms a major
absolute
backbone.
Legend.
Absolute legend.
Absolute legend.
Forms a backbone of Fabry and data analysis and data aggregation for all of the
and also Blue Sky cat herding and getting people to follow the starter packs and nodding the community. I mean, he's doing it all.
Yeah, absolute champion. So the reason that null time zone, I didn't have to advocate for it. I am a time zone hater. I firmly believe that we should abolish time zones and everybody should just be on UTC, and we shouldn't have to reference time zones. Nobody gets to, change their time zones or anything. Everybody just works UTC all the time, every time. And we just deal with it because I'm sick of time zones.
That's because you live in fucking New Zealand.
Not just that. If you've ever been a programmer and had to deal with time zones, it's
okay. Yeah, that is fucking nightmarish.
Okay, worst.
Fine.
So time zones, let's abolish them. I didn't have to advocate for this name. They just called it that, and I thought that was great. The reason that it's not in the database is not because it has null in the name. The reason is because at the moment the frame type was incorrect, so the upload to the card database failed. It's because it doesn't have a standard mechanologist frame. It has a modified mechanologist frame.
It has the crank frame.
Yeah, so I have to adjust the data there before it gets uploaded, and it should get uploaded sometime this week. So yeah, hopefully that answers those questions.
I think so. The next one is from Mara, the deposed Empress of Volcor. Recently on Blue Sky, you said you had a song stuck in your head but couldn't remember which one. Did you ever remember what song it was? Follow-up, was it the Baby Shark song? It's always the Baby Shark song. Secondary follow-up, is it the Baby Shark song now?
All right. First question, I figured it out. And the reason I figured it out is because I had heard it on the radio. But stupid radio channels never announce what the name of the song was at the end of the song. Usually they do, but they didn't this time. So I went through the day trying to remember the lyrics so that I could Google it when I got home to look up the song. And then I just couldn't for the life of me remember anything with it. So for about a week, I've been every time I'm in the car, I've just been flipping between different radio stations, hoping to hear a snippet of that song so that I could then furiously write down the lyrics so that I could Google what friggin' song it was. Turns out, and I just discovered this the other day, turns out the song that I was trying to remember was called Still Into You by Cyril and Mary Jo. And it's a short 2.5 minute song with synth beats and in and out. It's really catchy. It's not the best song. It was just, I just really wanted to figure out what that song was. Second one, no, it wasn't Baby Shark. And the third one, no, goddammit, if it was Baby Shark, I know it was Baby Shark.
I actually have never heard that song.
Don't.
And I feel like I'm the most fortunate person in the world that I've never heard this song.
I think it's like earworm crack cocaine. It is just it burrows deep inside your brain and just entangles your synapses into an endless spiral of mental decay. It is just
okay. Well, there's plenty of that going on over here to begin with. I don't need any help. So all right. Moving on. Josh, what's a question you want to ask us?
How you doing?
Floor is yours.
How's everyone doing? You guys doing okay?
Fuck, man. No, we live in America, and it's very hard to be doing okay over here. And sorry. If you care about other people at all, it's very hard to be okay over here because it is very clear that the power structure in this country is shifting away from giving a shit about people whatsoever. or has shifted completely away, I should say, from giving a shit about people at all. So otherwise, like it's still the same. We try to carve out those little corners of joy in our life, same as we always have. It's just the corners are harder to find, and we're viciously lucky to have friends like you, and also our podcast community, and then the people in this game in the greater community, and it gives us at least something to always look forward to.
Yeah,
and that helps a ton. But yeah, it's dark over here at times. But we'll get on the best we can, and then hopefully find a way out of here. Like that's
the threat level's at 9.
That means no.
No, 9. Like out of 10.
Which is no.
No, just
what? Well, am I missing something here? Okay. But
I get that, and I think it's hard for a lot of people to realize, if you don't live in that situation, if you don't live in America, if you don't experience these sorts of things, how frustrating and scary it can be at times as well. And I can say this from obviously I live in New Zealand. I'm probably as far away as you can get from America on this planet, but my heart does go out to the people in America going through this time, and
maybe different choice of words.
Going out to the people in America.
Just so you know, after Elon saying "my heart goes out to you" is a bit sketch.
Okay,
that's a new dog whistle.
There are no hand
Jesus
gestures here. I'll give you that.
Oh my God!
But I think what you're saying, rings true, right? Like, there are a lot of things that you can't change in this world. There are a lot of things which are out of your control, and it's really important to focus on the things that are in your world that are close to you. To keep companionship, keep that partnership. Be part of this community, be part of this friend group, give and take and share things that you love, and respect the things that other people love. And I think it's important to focus on that at a small scale in your own world so that you can get through these tough times. And, if everybody does that, and, eventually it brings everybody through, and it creates a larger difference, and it creates these larger communities that you can live with and can thrive.
Secondary question from the same question asker. Also Devon or Cornish method. I have no idea what that even means.
I think it's the Cornish method. So this is referring to. So have you had a scone before, or scone?
Of course, I've had a scone.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the latest promo for Fab from
the Sink Below.
Below. Yeah. So in that artwork, there are scones or scones, depending on how you want to pronounce them. I think it's scones. That have jam and then cream on top, which is the Cornish method. But the thing is, the Devon method is the opposite. You put the cream on first, and then you put the jam on top of that. And the debate is about whether or not you do one or the other. It's like a 50-50 kind of thing. How would you guys do it? Would you put jam on first or cream on first?
No cream. Easy, jam only.
Jam only.
If it was me, it would be jam then butter.
Butter is cream.
Yeah. So jam then cream is the Cornish method.
In America though, it's butter. And it's not real butter. It's like, don't you wish this was real butter?
I live in Iowa, sir. It's real butter. We don't fuck around. Yeah. I go to the Amish people that live, just 45 minutes out of town, and buy butter by the block. So
real butter.
I get butter.
But I believe the late Queen, her preferred method was the Cornish method. So that was what my my family on my mother's side come from England, so they're very big fans of like the Queen, and that's how I was raised, was the Cornish method, which is jam and then cream. I can imagine that there's quite a few people out there who feel very differently, and I'm sure we'll hear from them when we go to Pro Tour.
The fact that this is like a discussion point is still fucking with my head.
Honestly, it's probably on par with. I think it's on par with like the pain de chocolat versus the chocolatine debate in France as well.
What? There's a pain. What? There's a debate.
Oh yeah, it's a heated debate, sir.
It's really heated. Yeah, I've heard both sides, and furiously there was no I could see it one way or the other. If you're into the debate, you're into the debate. You're firmly on one side of the fence.
This is some Gulliver's Travel shit. Like, with how they couldn't decide where to crack the fucking egg. Like, this is that shit. Like, what? Like, it's a pain au chocolat.
I typically you're just like online. It's like, this debate is silly. I can't believe that people would be like, by the way, it's this.
But if you want to call it a chocolatine, I'm fine. I don't give a fuck. But I've always known them as pain au chocolat. Like, I don't know. Oh, fucking Christ.
I typically just try and stay out of it. I'm just like, this is a.
I have to stay out of the pastry debates because it's just too much.
It's too much. Yes, you've got to stay neutral in these things. This is how you maintain. This is how you.
Maybe we do need to go to Switzerland.
Relationships. You have to deflect and, distract and otherwise engage with them on
obfuscate.
Yeah. Josh has asked about his pastry selections. He's like, that is way too political for me. So I instead am going to tell you should invade Greenland. And that's how we ended up where we are. So thanks, Josh.
Okay, right back to depressed. Next question is from Charlie. Josh, have you ever exercised your opportunity to answer a fab question with the simple statement, because I rule?
Because I rule. No, but I will keep that in my back pocket, ready for the right moment.
It has to be in Christchurch because that's like hometown.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's probably a good point. I will endeavor to use it at least once in the upcoming call in Christchurch. If you are that lucky player, I'm sorry.
Not even a, reference the show to get the bid or yada yada. No, just a simple, I am sorry.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Next one is from Syndra, Elusive Rune Chantress. Has anyone ever called a judge on you in Fab?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Before I started with LSS.
Okay. Had
lots of calls, and mostly because I was a newish player, especially newish player to card games. I've had IP2s before. I haven't had a game loss or a match loss or DQ. I'm not planning on it. But I have had judge calls before, and usually they were called by my opponent. Since I joined LSS, I don't think I've ever had the judge call on me for two reasons. If I'm playing against somebody who knows who I am and is experienced or is just experienced, typically I'm the one making the judge call because they trust me to make the decision of like what should happen. But if it's an inexperienced player, usually I'm calling the judge on their behalf to help resolve situations so that they sort of understand what's going on or what the proper procedure is. I never really want to, if I'm playing at a game, if I'm playing in like a tournament, like an official tournament, I never want to like obviously overrule the judge or do a judge's job where I'm like, oh, the fix is this. If there's something that requires a judge to come in and fix the game state or do an intervention or like issue a warning to like myself, even, for example, I've called a judge on myself to get myself a warning because I like looked at a card I shouldn't have.
I have also done that.
Yeah,
I have too.
Like
I had one time. It was actually at Nats this year. I called a judge on myself and I was way behind, right? Like it was like 30 to like, I think I had 7 health. There was no way I was winning this game, but I did something stupid. And so I called a judge on myself. And as we're waiting for the judge to come over, the dude went, I really admire that you're doing this knowing that it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
But like, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
want to keep it above board.
Yeah, it's just part of the procedure. And like, I think it's really important to normalize judge calls because like the whole point of judges is that they're here to help you resolve the game. Like, I think in a lot of card games or a lot of communities, like there's a sentiment that like, you know, judges or referees or whatever you want to call them, they're sort of like an enemy to your game plan or your win percentage.
In America, we call them Patrick Mahomes' lover.
Right. In America, that just means that you don't like the Kansas City Chiefs. That's really it.
I don't get that reference at all. But it sounds funny, so I'll humor you.
Be thankful.
Think if in a football game, if all of the referees were also playing the game for one of the teams.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yep. Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like that's kind of the thing, right? And I think a lot of people as well. No, not a lot of people. I think there are some people who feel like because judges are in a position of power that they're likely to abuse that power, which it's not true at all. Like.
In America, we have cops.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's where part of that sentiment comes from.
It definitely is.
But like judges are there to judge the game because they love the game. They love judging. They want to help people and help the community. And I think, you know, even calling a judge on yourself just sort of normalizes that aspect of, hey, like I just want to play a fair, fun game, and I'm going to call on the person who helps facilitate this to help us out and make sure we're playing above board. And you know, whether or not you get a warning or two, like whether or not you get a warning or two doesn't matter. Like it's a reminder that like you've made a mistake, but you've corrected it, and they've come and corrected it, and it's part of like the judge's like knowledge that you've made that mistake for them to keep track of. But it's not meant to be this punishment where it's like you've done something wrong, like shame on you. It's just one of those things which is a light sort of like tap on the wrist or just a reminder that this is something that you just need to be paying attention to continue playing fairly and above board. And normalizing that behavior is just so important because the more that we can get people to call judges when they really need to and they don't feel uncomfortable to have a judge at the table, like, you know, sorting things out, the more fun it's going to be for players to experience playing Flesh and Blood, especially at large tournaments when there are high stakes and you need someone there to intervene.
Yeah, that covers it. Next one's from Ejor. Josh, you remember that you still owe me Whitaker's macadamia block, right? I'm just kidding. Or am I? Of course I'm totally kidding. Or am I?
Ejor, I do remember that I owe you one, but I've got some bad news. They've discontinued it. Years ago.
This is Ejor's John Wick moment.
They had a delicious block of chocolate that was white chocolate macadamia, and it was
oh my god, it's my jam.
That was the best. They stopped producing that, and I think they stopped producing their milk chocolate variety back in the days because of the rising price of wholesale macadamias.
Macadamia nuts. Yeah.
So last year, they brought it back as a limited edition short print run of macadamia chocolate. And when I asked you what you wanted, you happened to pick it at the time that it was out of stock in the stores and that they weren't getting any more. And I only realized that when I tried to get you some for Japan. So, Ejor, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I hope to make it up for you when I come to the next event that you're at. Hopefully London, if you make it over there. Otherwise,
do they still make the West Coast buttermilk caramelized white chocolate?
Let me look it up.
Because if so, I need
West Coast buttermilk
caramelized white chocolate.
This is the specialty one. I think I think we could probably make that happen.
Yes.
I'll write it down.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you. Maybe that'll be a good replacement for Ishor. I guess we'll find out. He'll say something in the Discord for sure.
Yeah. If he wants, he can browse the Whitaker's site and figure it out.
Next question is from Stoop Kid. Not sure if I'm still allowed to ask. Why wouldn't you be? But if so, what are your thoughts on ways to mitigate rule sharking in lower profile games? So should everyone really learn the rules deeply, or are there core tenets to learn that help less experienced folks avoid these situations? What are your thoughts on judges who are, well, I guess we'll take that as a second question. Let's take the first one first. So what are your thoughts on ways to mitigate rule sharking in lower profile games? And should everyone just really learn the rules deeply, or are there core tenets to learn that help less experienced folks avoid these situations?
So rule sharking in Fab has actually a very specific definition. I think rule sharking and like angle shooting and whatnot are usually used like quite broad terms as sort of like people manipulating the rules or talking their way out of situations or into situations, all that sort of a thing. But rule sharking specifically has a specific meaning in Fab. The meaning is a player, by their own actions, shows intentional behavior to prevent an opponent from interacting with the game when they can legally do so, or have their opponent commit an infraction. So the idea is like you basically cause your opponent to like, I don't want you to, I did this, you don't have a way to be able to interact with this because this is at instant speed, or like you've missed the trigger window here or something like that. Or like you've done this wrong, so you're causing a game rules violation, or like you're putting them in a position where they're disadvantaged when they shouldn't be due to the rules. So that is rules sharking. However, this might just be because like they might just be using that term more generally in terms of like how do you stop being disadvantaged when you don't know the rules very, very well. And I guess my advice sort of comes down to like, we want, how to say, learning the rules takes time. Like we can't ask people to just sit down and read the comprehensive rules and the tournament rules and policy and just know everything. Like it takes time, and you only really retain it when you're interested or you're invested or you experience the rules. A lot of people just get a very base understanding of how these rules work, the basic responsibilities that they should be following through with. And you can't expect players to just like pick up every single nuance. So the first thing that I would say is that don't stress about the nuance in the rules. Learn the basics, learn the basic responsibilities, and then over time, just build up your knowledge slowly by being interested or experiencing those sorts of things. I would say the other part of that is to not be caught in these situations. It's really good to be open, to be honest, to communicate really well, because doing those things sets you up for success in your games. If you clarify the situation, make sure there's no ambiguous or misunderstandings. Again, like I was saying, calling a judge, like normalizing the behavior of like if there's a discrepancy or a disagreement, or there's something that you can't resolve, calling in a judge to act as that impartial party to help you resolve those situations. Those are the tools that you can use as a player that don't require a massive understanding or nuance of the rules, but will set you up for success, to avoid being in these situations where somebody can angle shoot or rules shark or do things to put you at a disadvantage when they know nuance or want to take advantage of nuance and you don't. It's like I said, it's going to take, it would be too long for everybody to be able to understand all the rules all the time. So just following these basic principles, playing fairly, you're going to set yourself up for success. And you can't expect yourself to just know all this nuance. Just take it slowly, enjoy the game, get this experience, and before you know it, you'll be a master on the rules as well.
Their second part of their question was, what are your thoughts on judges who are part of a team overseeing events where their team has representation? So this would be like, think of just using names, not necessarily of judges, but using just names of people. So this would be like,
if Michael Fang was a judge and Brody was a player.
Right. Exactly.
So it's, I think a lot of judges have, you can't avoid the community aspect of judges being invested and having relationships with players, and like, the important thing is that judges have to recognize that in a professional setting that they have to distance themselves emotionally from being invested, like from this personal relationship versus the call that they have to make. I know I've excused myself from a couple of calls because when I can, because the calls involved players from my locals or players that I have personal relationships with, like friendly relationships. And it's situations like that where I'm like, okay, look, there are other judges available to be able to take this call. The person putting their hand up or their opponent or whatnot, the player is somebody that I have a personal relationship with. I'm going to tap this judge on the shoulder and ask them to take the call because I want to emotionally distance myself and make sure that the table has the fairest or least biased resolution possible. However, that's not always possible. Like if you're the head judge of an event, like, you're going to have a relationship with like at least one of the players that you say. And the most important thing there is obviously just maintaining the professional decorum to act as unbiased and as justly as possible. And that is one of the things that we look for in our leadership positions. If you get put as a head judge, if you get these certifications and whatnot, you have to show that you're able to act in this professional manner and have the ability to make unbiased decisions. And that's when we staff these people as our head judges for Pro Tours and Worlds and callings and those sorts of things. Our expectation is that they have shown competence in that area, and we trust that they will do their best to impart unbiased opinions and unbiased rulings when they go ahead and have to confront these situations.
I think that's a good answer. Next one is from Justin S. As a level 0 judge and an aspiring L1, what is the best way to learn and practice being a judge in Flesh and Blood?
I'd say the first thing is play the game. There are a few judges, there are a few even high-level judges who don't play the game very much. They're very, very good at policy, but they struggle a little bit, or they have some weaknesses in the rules aspect. Like there's also judges that, really, really good with rules, but struggle in policy. It's all, all about like identifying your weaknesses and improving. One of the things I think is very valuable is actually just being able to play the game, because playing the game means that you not only understand the aspects of the rules, the interactions that come up, the common questions that come up, you can also experience from a player what calling a judge is like. Like, what are your expectations? Like, if you go to a tournament as a player, you call a judge, instead of just being a player in that moment. If you want to become a judge, look at what the judge is actually doing. Like, what questions do they ask? Like, what sort of things are they trying to figure out? How do they deal with questions from players? Do they pull players away from the table? And why do they do that? So, like, playing the game is one really key aspect of just, like, becoming a judge, in my opinion, or just one of the pathways that you can, become a judge with a solid background. The other aspect, I think, is talking to other judges and watching them at events. Like, it's really important to be part of the judge community, because while you can just learn all of the questions and answers from a book, a lot of being a judge is soft skills. And that is like, talking to people, the questioning and answering, and the logistics of like how an event is run. And you can only really learn a lot of these things by being involved in an event from a judge capacity. So you can talk to judges, you can ask if you're a local judge, if you can support them in an event, or you can shadow them, or maybe like, you're in between rounds of like side events or between events that are side events, or like a big tournament, you could go talk to one of the judges and say, hey, look, I have a couple of questions about being a judge. And we have judge booths at these big events as well. If you're interested in being a judge or want to learn more about judging, you can find judge booths at a lot of these events who are more than happy to talk you through the process and, keying you up with maybe even someone from your local area to be able to reach out and contact. And other aspect of like skill development is just like reading and discussing and participating in these discussions and answering questions in like any form, like coming to the Discord, the Judge Hub or the Judges of Wraith Discord, going to the Purple Discord and the Game Q&A channel, going on Facebook on the Facebook Rules channel, being in Twitter or BlueSky or Instagram or whatever form, and just sort of like skulking around, looking at what people are, what questions people have and figuring out how best to answer them and like where you can find them in the rules. Those are all solid ways of being able to improve your experience and to be able to figure out like navigating these documents, what sort of like the phrasing of how you say these answers to people to make sure you're answering them correctly, appropriately, concisely. These are all skills that are developed by just involving yourself in the community, participating, and just finding our resources in our booths at our events as well.
All right. Next one is from Baseline Zombie. What are the rules regarding the use of human teeth as counters?
Hold on.
Googling. Please hold.
412, infringing and offensive material. Individuals may not possess material that infringes the intellectual property right of LSS or non-LSS material that is offensive, disruptive, or affects enjoyment of others.
Okay, so you're saying that the human teeth may affect the enjoyment of others.
I would say that it is very likely that someone may not have an enjoyable time if the opponent is using human teeth as counters, and which may be grounds for them not using those as counters.
Okay.
Up to the discretion of the tournament organizer, the head judge, and the opposing player, of course. It's a case-by-case basis. I mean, if your community uses human teeth all the time, like...
You have a lot of other things going on, and I don't want to know about it, honestly. We're just good moving on from there. Next one is from Blaze Storm, value member of the Patreon. For Josh, with quick dodge flexors, does each activation count for extra defending cards for tenacity?
So, no. The... activation does create a new defend event. So if you've got something like Endless Winter has an on-fuse triggered ability which says like whenever the defending hero adds a card as adds a defending card to this chain link. I can't remember the exact wording. Create a frostbite under their control. So if you activated quick dodge reflexes onto if it was already defending on a different chain link and then you activated it and put it onto Endless Winter, you would get a frostbite because you're creating another defend event. You're defending. But it doesn't duplicate the card. Like there's no two cards, no two quick dodge reflexes. So when you look at tenacity actually just counts the number of defending cards, the combat chain. And because you're just moving it from one chain link to another to continue defending, you don't actually duplicate the card. So the card is still only counted as one card there, essentially.
Gotcha. That's what I thought, but thank you for making sure that I'm not stupid on that one, at least. Next one's from Tiny 10 Hands. What is everyone's favorite vegetable? Charmer, you're first.
Carrot.
Carrot.
It's a solid vegetable.
I mean, it's a good vegetable. It's like it's kind of just
that.
like it's a less good parsnip, but I mean, I like a carrot. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, what would your answer be then?
Asparagus. Full stop.
Asparagus. Yeah.
Fucking love me some asparagus. Asparagus with like garlic and a little olive oil tossed in after a perfect blanching, and so they're still crispy. Yeah. And then it makes your piss smell awesome for like an entire day.
Good. I like asparagus. Don't get me wrong, but it's just not as flexible. Like, it's hard for me to think of a dish where, like, I'm upset if I add carrots to it. Like, it's in stir fry, it's in pot roasts, it's in stews and soups.
I put asparagus
like,
in all these things.
Cake?
I've never made an asparagus cake, but carrot cake is goated.
Yeah,
like carrot cake is delicious.
Carrots are just good.
Carrot cake with is it the cream cheese icing?
Yep.
Oh,
so
yeah.
if you next time that you make it to, like, if you ever make it to the Midwest, Josh, we will go to Kansas City and we'll go to Jack Stack's Barbecue. And when I'm at Jack Stack's, I order 4 carrot cakes. I order 1 for there and 3 to go, because I will eat them over the course of the next 2 days. And they are just these delightful, very well spiced cream cheese frosted carrot cakes. And now I'm making myself super hungry and very sad that I don't have one.
Out friggin' standing. That sounds delicious.
So good. Now, okay, so what was yours?
Okay, so I'm a bit of a stickler when we talk about fruits and vegetables, because it depends on what you mean by vegetable. Because
so yours is like Terry Schiavo.
I was gonna make that joke, and I thought it was too fucking insensitive. You son of a bitch! God damn it! I was fucking sitting here earlier today going, you know what? I read that question. I was like, man, I really want to make a Terry Schiavo joke here, but I don't think that that's
it's been
okay.
long enough.
And here you are, just fucking blitzing in. God damn it! All right, sorry.
Well,
sorry.
Anyway, anywho, yeah, have your moment, Charmer.
No, you're fine. I'm
prick.
So, by definition, a vegetable can mean anything from just edible plant matter to edible plant matter excluding like fruits, flowers, nuts, and like cereals, grains, all those sorts of things. So it depends on like where the spectrum, like what context we're talking about vegetables are. I saw this question and I had to think about it, and I'm like, rather than answering based on the context, I'll just give you what my favorite are in each of those categories, because I think that's much more productive. Well, less productive. It's much more interesting for me.
It's more interesting.
So at the moment, and like I would say today, my favorite fruit is cherries, because we're in the middle of cherry season. We're just after cherry season at the moment, and that was delicious through Christmas. Wheat is probably my favorite cereal grain. Cashews are my favorite nuts.
God, you're a man of culture. That's what you are.
Broccoli is my favorite flower, and carrot is probably my favorite vegetable.
All right. There you go. Favorite herb?
Favorite herb? Basil.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's way up there for me.
Yeah.
Charmer?
Sorry, it was a favorite what?
Herb.
I don't know that I have a favorite herb. Dill, maybe?
Rosemary is mine. Like, rosemary is just perfect.
Sorry. Like, I guess mint.
Oh yeah, because you like mint in every
I like mint in everything,
mint.
and I guess that does count. Like, I for whatever reason I don't think of it really as an herb, but I guess it falls there. So it would be mint. But outside of that, I would probably say dill.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's legit. I use a lot of basil too, though. Like, I really do. It's like, I love fresh with because I make chicken parm. I always garnish it with fresh and
absolutely outstanding. Honestly, anything tomato based basically just goes with basil. It's so good.
No, yeah, 100%. Yeah, like tomato soup. If it's not basil based, like if it's not tomato basil soup, the pointless. Just throw it out. Start over. You fucked up. Next one is from Sephiroth. Josh, what is your favorite fab keyword and why?
My favorite keyword is pears.
Pears.
Do you know what card it's on?
Pears?
Yeah, pairs, as in Pairs, pairs.
Yeah, like it pairs with.
No, I get it. It has to be on like Typanus, like one of the judge cards, right? The adjudicator weapons have pairs. Yep.
On Gavel of Natural Order has pairs.
That's it.
Yeah. So that's my favorite keyword for for 3 reasons. One, there's only one card with pairs with, and that is on the adjudicator card. 2, that adjudicator card is the only card I've ever designed, and I really love that card. And then 3, I love the idea of matching equipment. My favorite thing in like video games and whatnot is when there's like an equipment set bonus, or like there is like some sort of like matchy stuff going on. Like
you would love Kingdom Death Monster.
That's why I like the new Arcanite chess piece.
Yeah, I mean, like that's I love the Arcanite chess piece because of course that synergy, and like it's not an explicit keyword on Arcanite Skullcap. Oh, sorry, on the Arcanite. What's it called? Arcanite Fortress.
Yeah, Fortress.
Yeah.
But I love that idea, like of like synergy between different equipment pieces, and like pairs with on the Gavel is just one of the things that really sort of tickles my fancy when it comes to equipment set bonuses. I'm excited to see more of that in the future. It's obviously just on the adjudicator card at the moment, but that doesn't exclude it from being included in future sets.
That's fair.
But yeah, my favorite keyword. And honestly, like we were even talking about before the pod, we were talking about Baldur's Gate 3, and
hell yeah,
one of the things that really like I wonder if there's like a mod or something for it, but like all of the equipment, there are sets of equipment, but none of them like synergize with each other or like have an explicit synergy or set bonus.
There's a couple of rings that do.
Yeah, it's true.
But not in an actual set. Like you would think the Char set would actually like have something if you had all
like,
of it.
Oh my god, like this cool, like there's got this like Dark Inquisitor. Was it? Dark
It's Inquisitors. Yeah. Or Justiciars. Sorry, Justiciars.
Yeah, sorry. I was like, oh, that'd be cool. Like, I wonder if there's like a hidden bonus or like something like that. And I equipped it all, and I'm like, oh.
But nothing. It looks dope.
It does. It
looks real good.
I dress Shadowheart up in it just to make her happy. She can be a Justiciar.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I usually dress Astarion in like the most rogue-looking rogue shit you've ever rogued.
Oh, it's like the studded drow leather armor stuff.
Yep, and then the hood, and then the whole 9, and then the double, the legendary sword, legendary dagger, legendary crossbow. It's just like, yep,
amazing.
Because he's one-shotting. Like whenever the start of combat is, I'm picking one thing and that thing's dead.
Outstanding.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Last question: how does Cosmic Awakening interact with Tiger Stripe Shuko? I think I understand this one. Cosmic Awakening does not have a defined value on the card for its attack value, so it would not trigger Tiger Stripe Shuko.
So,
God damn it!
The final answer would be correct, but how you get
how I got there is not quite. Okay.
So, this has been, and I guess this would come close to being one of the more tough rules questions that we have to answer. It applies and then it unapplies, and the reason is that Cosmic Awakening has a determined value because it has a star. The star is always an asterisk is always determined. If there's nothing that determines it explicitly, the value is set to 0. So because no cards have been pitched to play it or whatever, it starts at 0. So you announce the card, I'm playing this card, it is going to be 0, and maybe it's like the second attack this turn. So Tiger Stripe Shuko begins to apply to it. Then you go ahead and pitch cards to play Cosmic Awakening. The power increases up to like 5 to 20. That is the base power of the card. Now, because Tiger Stripe Shuko is a static ability, static abilities get reevaluated if the properties of the objects that they apply to change. Cosmic Awakening changes from 0 to 20 or 0 to 5 or whatever, and therefore does not become, or it becomes not the second attack you play with 2 or less power, 2 or less base power. So Shuko is like, hey, you're playing this card that has 0 power. I'm going to apply to this card because it's going to be the second card you play with 2 or less power. But as soon as you pitch for the card and it starts to increase in base power, Shuko gets reevaluated and it's like, well, actually, this isn't going to be the second card that you play with 2 or less power. Therefore, my effect is not going to apply to you. So the moment you pitch and the power increases, the Shuko effect isn't going to be applied to Cosmic Awakening. Therefore, Cosmic Awakening does not get the benefit of Tiger Stripe Shuko, even if it is the second attack you play in a combat chain or the turn. I think it's the turn, right?
Turn.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. But I guess I could always look it up. But I play that card enough that I should fucking know by now.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the ban earlier, and I've been playing Ira in my local leagues.
Yeah, it's turn.
Yeah.
I was right. Okay.
Yeah, I should know this already.
Yeah, I know. I've played that card enough. I should know by now, but I was pretty sure a turn. But man, we got through it all. We're coming up on 3 hours, so our normal.
Yep,
as it were.
Yep. What was the record last time?
3:14.
Okay,
I want to say. Yeah, we're not going to hit it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna waffle for 15 minutes. I mean, we could just talk about Baldur's Gate 3 for 15 minutes. But I don't.
We could say we could do that for an hour, but I'm just going to go ahead and thank some patrons because I think that they deserve it. Jesus, these people. They just keep changing these names and keep making it worse on me. All right, then. I guess I'm just going to read them as is. With first-time card associate producers, we have Andy, Sindra, Jack Mehoff, which is definitely not real anymore. That's somebody else entirely. Jacob and the Salty Sea Cat. Our executive producers are Blaze Torb, value member of the Patreon, Brandon, Diana, the Green Cosplayer, Josh.
Lance Goodthrust.
Man, that has to go in the supercut. Matt Tutokes, Micaiah, Puxanus, Sergeant Eastbjorn, Vintox 18, Chris, Phillip, Rich, Sergeant Swanson, Matt, and The Jackal. If you're interested in becoming a member of the Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/fleshandpod. Link is in the show notes. There's some number of fucking tiers. If you subscribe to one and pay us money, then you come to FAP After Dark. Those are the rules. I don't make them. Wait. Actually, I do make them. But those are the rules. If you need to reach out to us at all, you can email us at fleshandpod@gmail.com. You can find us on BlueSky. Just search Flesh and Pod. Easiest thing to do is there is a link to the Discord in the show notes. Click it. Join our Discord. Josh Scott's in there. Every now and again, he'll put a laundromat there. And, just the visiting of the laundromat, I guess. Well, whatever. You don't have to be a member of anything or pay us anything to join the Discord. That is totally free. There are a fuckload of channels in there. I keep having to make new ones. Like there's Charmer's dad joke channel now, which I'm still muting. Thank you very much. Have not looked at it
put
once.
That on notifications.
God damn it.
Yeah, you should.
Ever since I got fucking gooned by it last podcast when I was still in it after I muted it. And so I see the worst jokes ever. Josh, where can they find you?
So I'm about, I'm in the Purple Discord. I'm in the Judge Hub. The Judges of Wraith Discord. You can also find me on BlueSky. I'm JJ Scott NZ, BlueSky Social. Otherwise, other shout outs as well. If you're interested in becoming a judge, I highly recommend that you get involved with the community early and talk to your local judges and seek us out. FaBTCG.com if you're interested in becoming a judge. And yeah, if we got lots of swag coming out. I've been drinking from this swanky new drink bottle that you may see me sipping throughout the podcast here. It's a Camelback Judges of Wraith logo on it as well. We've also got a whole bunch more swag coming out. You may have seen things like a plush bee at the local events, as well as some fancy hoodies and stuff that you guys can get. So if you're already a judge or interested in becoming a judge, those will be coming available and become more widespread as you get into it. Otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much all from me, I think.
Yeah, Klaus had like a really sick looking Judges of Wraith jacket. Like that thing was gorgeous.
Yeah,
So-
we're getting up there. I think we'll probably explode in cool stuff this year or late this year.
Sounds great. Charmer, where can they find you?
In the Discord, making dad jokes.
Yeah,
The way Logan intended.
that's not ever what I intended.
Also on BlueSky. You can find me there too.
Charmer.com.
When I'm not being depressed, yeah.
Well, you actually post your depression kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I get a kick out of it. It reminds me that my life's not so bad.
Definitely not living in Josh Scott's basement illegally.
Do they have basements in New Zealand?
We don't.
I didn't think so.
We just build on the ground and build up.
Yeah, that's the Midwest. You have to have basements, otherwise you die to tornadoes.
Yeah. Tornadoes.
Yeah, I heard. We can probably talk about this after the pod. I'm curious
go
why
ahead.
America has basements.
So it's pretty. It's actually two-tier simplicity. So in the Midwest, it's one. They acted as larders and storage systems because farms were a big deal, right?
Right.
And so they're giant larders for canned goods and anything else that came from crops, and they became sort of an assumed thing. They're also just literally protection from tornadoes. So if a tornado were to come and mow down your home, it wouldn't hit your basement. You'd be safe. The third thing is because it gets so fucking cold here that if you didn't build down far enough, your pipes in your home would freeze. Sometimes they still do. And so all of our piping for like our water and things like that are in these basement structures, which are heated. So it saves that too. So it really has to get super cold. If you have a basement in your home, it has to get super cold for your pipes to freeze or burst.
Gotcha.
So it's another part of utility. And those are really the reasons.
Oh yeah, fair enough.
Also, they make the better meth labs too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, fair enough. I will say I'm a little bit jealous of not having a basement because having like extra room in your house sounds like a pretty cool way to like have like a game room or an office or something like that.
Yep.
I don't need another meth lab, so I don't.
Another?
Yeah.
Well, we can
one's
cut
enough.
that, right?
No, not now.
When I was younger, my dream home at a point in my life, I was like, man, it'd be really cool if your entire house was just basement. Like I only wanted
Just
a
a hobbit hole?
subterranean. And I liked the envisioning like inviting people over and not telling them, so they just like pull up to what looks like just an empty lot. Like it's just grass.
Yeah.
And I'm
a
just
friend
like,
of mine,
yeah.
a friend of mine had that. Well, sort of like that. So her father was is one of the top CPAs in the country. So flies out, works on a lot of corporate accounts. They have a ton of money, but they live in Iowa, where money goes very, very far. And so you'd go to like their house back before they built a new one, and it looked like this very small ranch home. So one level and very small, not what you expect, but it went 3 levels below ground. And so it's this giant subterranean like complex. And you look up top and it looked like there was a 1-car garage and and a small home, but the 1-car garage actually drove down into a parking structure that was carved down into the ground. And right. So
I always liked it as well. Basements are kind of like self-regulating.
yeah.
And I tend to prefer things like a little on the chilly side. So here in the Midwest, having a basement, growing up, it was always the place that I wanted to hang out, not because it was like cool or anything. It was because it was cool temperature wise, right? It was just comfortable. And it's like
Turns out
that
heat
year round.
rises.
Yeah.
Weird.
But it also
all right.
it's also like self-insulated in the winter though too. It's like
Yep.
it's the same temperature essentially just year round.
all year round,
which
Yeah.
is just
Basements
nice.
are great. Except for when they leak. That's when they're shit. But luckily, if you pay attention, you can make so that doesn't happen. All right. Well, everybody, that's our show for this week. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next week for 1 66. Yeah, that sounds right. Jesus fucking Christ, I need a break. But it won't be next week. So we'll talk to you then. Bye.